조롱님 안녕하세요. 이번 주도 아마 오늘 하고 내일 한 두 경기만 보고 마지막 날 네 경기 보고 그럴 것 같아요. 둘째 날은 다 보는 게 너무 힘들어서.
무엇을 도와드릴까요?
유튜브 가시면은 영상 좀 있어요. MDI 봤던 거. 뭐 완전 준비해서 각 잡고 해설하고 그런 건 아닌데 그냥 적당히 노가리 까면서.
신의 가호가 함께하길. 조심해서 가세요. 반가워요.
금송님 안녕하세요. 밥국님도 안녕하세요.
신의 은총이 함께.
오늘 드디어 제가 제일 좋아하는 몬카가 나오는 날이라 제가 첫 주부터 그랬죠. 몬카 잘한다고. 약을 그렇게 팔아놨는데 못하면 어떡하냐. 네. 중계는 아니지 뭐 아무튼 MDI 보기 시작한 첫날부터 계속 얘기했던 몬카가 나오거든요. 기대하셔도 될 거예요. 진짜 잘할 거예요.
안녕하신가요? 안녕히 가세요.
이게 막 중계하고 그럴 때는 이, 그 뭐라 그래야 돼. 오늘 경기에 어떤 맵이 나오고 어떤 어픽스가 쓰이고 그런 거 막 다 보고 준비하고 그러거든요. 그 맵에서 그 지난 조 결과가 어떻게 됐는지 막 시간 봐두고 전전별로 뭐 얘기할 게 뭐 있나 막 미리 메모해놓고 막 이러는데 그런 거 1도 없습니다. 이거. 그냥 보는 거예요, 저도. 오늘은 이제 그 뭐지? 대회 참가하는 모든 팀이 그냥 한 경기씩 하는 거거든요. 그래서 뭐 대충 2일차, 3일차 경기가 어떻게 흘러갈지 뭐 프리뷰라고 보시면 돼요. 순위는 낮지만 예상외로 잘하는 팀이 있는지 레이더 사이트나 켜놓고 봐야겠다.
Good morning, gamers.
어,
Welcome to Group C. the
이번에도
third and final
30,
group of our
이번에도
MDI
많나?
stages
30만
here.
달러요.
I'm Dratnos. Later today, we're gonna
아,
have Makes and Titles
대충
joining
뭐 한
us.
4억?
Right now,
4억 정도
it's
되나?
Nagura and Zyronic. And this week, we've got some powerful teams ready to compete in some dungeons. Nagura, let's go over some of the top competitors. Who are we looking at in this lineup?
치즈가 순위가 좀 높고
Yeah, so we have Monka as the number one seed of this group,
디스미스드도
and
그래도
overall
계속
number
나오는
two seed
팀이고
of the time trials.
뭐
And they, of
나머지는
course, are familiar to the MDI. They have a lot of experience, so they're definitely
근데
the favorites to
디스미스드가
win this
23이네?
this weekend. But then we also have the number 5 seed Cheese. They're a team
뭐
that
못 보던
haven't played
팀은
together
썬더스트럭.
in this competition before, but they have a lot of like really good individual players. I'm sure a lot of them are going to be familiar to the viewers as well.
MMDT라고
And then
나오는데
I guess there's
미식
also
미미 드림팀.
Thunderstruck, which is the team with
네, 오늘
Dr. J
몬카
that
출격합니다.
everyone has been waiting for.
Yeah, of course. Thundered and Thunderstruck are kind of our challengers for those slots out of the group. There are 2 spots out of every MDI group to the global finals, and it's going to be pretty exciting to see.
보니까 그냥 높은 순위는 몬카, 치즈, 썬더스트럭 이 정도거든요. 치즈가 5위 팀이고 썬더스트럭이 8위거든요. 나머지는 뭐 그냥 쏘쏘 뭐 두 번째 경기가 11, 14위 팀이니까 두 번째 경기가 약간 미들?
And we're going to be starting off our day here with Monka versus Dismissed. So Zyra, what's the story with Monka? How
지난대 때
what happened with
디스미스가
this
순위가
team over the
조금
course of like the shadow
높았던 팀으로 기억을 하는데
Man, Monka is a team that if you really haven't been paying attention to the MDI scene for the past couple of years, you
아니었나?
might be wondering who are these guys and where did they come from? I mean, essentially, they're a bunch of high key pushers that just someday decided, you know what, we could be good at MDI too, and then they started doing it, and then they were.
네, 맞네. 디스미스가 지난 대회 예선 12위 통과했던 팀이거든요. 예선 통과만 해놓고 준비를 조금 했을 수도 있어요. 아니면 진짜 뭐 멤버가 뭐 바뀌거나 그러면서 순위가 낮아졌을 수도 있는데 디스미스가 지난 대회 기억이 나는 걸로 봐서 노쿠드가 폭군 23이네요.
Now here's a look at the dungeon pool that we'll be working with this whole weekend. So anytime you see any of these dungeons, they're going to be at this key level. And with these affixes, of course,
저는 그 뭐지? 대회에서 제일 놀랬던 부분이 첫날 에코 젤리아가 노쿠드 이nem에서 딜을 단일 딜을 거의 5.8? 5K에서 50K에서 60K 사이를 뽑았었는데 제가 그걸 보고 나서 용일로 계속 가봤어요. 노쿠드 이nem을. 나도 중첩 잘 유지하고 그러면 한 40K 나오지 않을래나 하고 가봤는데 진짜 30K 이상 안 나와요. 그러니까 30K가 한계예요. 30K가 40K는 못 넘겠더라고요. 진짜 중첩 신경 써서 먹고 힐을 하면서 진짜 딜러들 다 가운데다 붙여놓고
It's interesting
그렇게
because I think the
해봤는데
first
딜이 안 나와요.
series doesn't necessarily have any
진짜 그
dungeons
지팡이가
that are
필요한 걸 수도 있어요.
extremely
지팡이가.
difficult in
근데
there.
지팡이가 없거든요.
But I think Ruby Life Pools,
아, 님들 저
has
이번
more
주에
set
그리고
boss rank in
속현직
there, and it is
먹었습니다.
at
드디어.
22, which is one of the higher
아,
level.
진짜 13주
It's
차
probably
만에.
going to be a dungeon that we are going to see banned at least
저 이제
for a couple of
속현직
years.
있는 용일이에요.
And other than that, I think the dungeons
어우,
seem
진짜
pretty
장신구.
good for our first series.
제가 수요일에 350만 골에 딘치 쳤는데 그 다음날 주간 상자에서 딱 나오더라고요. 돈 굳었습니다. 돈 굳었어.
Waiting later in the weekend to challenge those teams at the 23 keystone level, which is it's quite high, right? It's quite high compared to MDIs in the past.
네.
In the past we used to
비로소
have,
이제
kind of
부캐릭 속현징
60 or
오너.
something like that this season, but now we're up into this level where like
네, 완벽한 시나리오.
you even
저 복술이 지난주였나? 지난주에 먹었고
Yeah, we've tried
용일 이번 주에
very-
먹었고
we've tried a
이제
lot
신기만
to
먹으면
vary the
돼요.
different
신기만.
dungeons, and when everything's the same key level,
신기도
everything
뭐
seems a
금방
little
나오겠지.
similar, so the variation between 20 and 23 makes it so
아니요,
that you can
본캐
pull
용일의
these
부캐 복술이에요
crazy
지금.
pulls, right? You can pull entire sections of the dungeon, but at the 23
근데 뭐
level,
공칠에
those
살짝 바뀔
pulls,
수도 있겠죠?
there is a lot of variance there, and we've seen that in spades over the past couple of weekends. I think Shadow Moon Burial Grounds has been at either the 22 or the 23 key level the entire time. A lot of that has to do with the overall difficulty of the dungeon, but
저도 약간 용일은 그래도 6신화하고
some of the crazier
복술은 2신화만 했는데 복술이 먼저 먹었어요. 복술은 거의 한 6주차? 그때쯤 만렙 찍은 캐릭이거든요. 6주차? 7주차? 거의 뭐 한 달 만에 먹었는데 아, 용일은 첫 주부터 계속 했는데 3주차니까. 아, 근데 이거 어픽스가 조금 아쉽네요. 그냥 뭐 첫 경기 그냥 20분 만에 끝날 때? 아쉽네. 몽카 실수 한번 해가지고 3경기 봤으면 좋겠다. 첫날 몽룡사도 그렇고 루비도 그렇고 10몇 분에 끝나는 던전인데 이렇게 헤어지기 싫다고.
Nah, not really. They're going to be doing the same things we've seen pretty much, but with a higher degree of success, I'd imagine, because
네, 디스미스드는 그래도 짧은 던전을 가자고 앞에 대학을 밴을 했죠. 그나마 이제 기량 차이가 덜 날 수 있고 혹시나 몽카가 실수하면은 엎어질 수 있는 던전이라서 저 3렘 광장 다 몰고 1렘 3플링 하고 램드 가고 뭐 다를 게 없는 그게 던전이라서 루비에서 뭐 다른 게 있을래나? 몽카가 항상 기대했던 것보다 이상을 보여주긴 하거든요. 그러니까 분노가 있긴 한데 저게 분노였나? 저 강화구나. 강화가 있긴 한데 폭군이라서
rather than taking care of some of it before going onto the scroll, and maybe that ups the danger level as well. Of course, spiteful shades running around as well.
어픽스가 경화였죠. 경화면은 그래도
in some of the areas of this dungeon where you've already got a lot of dangerous trash being fought too. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
일단 조합, 몽카의 조합. 과연 흑마를 쓸 것인가, 야드를 쓸 것인가. 원하는 없는 어픽스고요. 경화 얘네한테 뭐 원하냐? 그냥 자원이죠, 자원.
Often a lot of cool strats and tactics come in from that.
원하는 그저 도시락일 뿐.
Yeah, and I wonder if they're maybe gonna play different comp, right? Because we've seen Warlock being played, and we've seen some different things in
하이라.
Temple. But it looks like we do see a pretty similar comp from
모아드.
that we've seen the previous weekends. Dismissed.
젤리아에
and
견줄 수
Dismissed
있는
as
힐러
well,
모아드.
And they are sticking to that evoker healer as well. But there we go.
역시 뭐 없죠? 디스미스도 용일 들고 나왔네.
Pulling all of the three elementals on top of each other. Basically every single trash mob on that left side. We'll see how fast they can clear this out.
다 동일해요. 셔플링 하면서 터지기 시작할 때 흡선 들어가고 자경 들어가고 정고 들어가고 고인 들어가고 어픽스가 치명인데 뭐 치명이야 없는 어픽스라고 봐도 되죠. 단수가 높지 않으니까.
no problem for them dismissed, though still having to deal with the remaining
이게
waters, and it's just not gonna end
속도
well.
차이가 장난 아니죠.
And that is rough.
몽카
setup
속도
to this
보세요,
system
지금.
was actually really rough. I don't know if
뭐
you noticed how they set up
전멸에서 그런
the
것도
setup
있긴
kind of
한데
in the hallway, and they weren't line of sighting.
제가 계속 말씀드렸던 몽카는 잘해요.
Droplets. So they were just getting hit by 3 extra droplets worth of splash damage, whereas Monka was line of sighting it around the corner. So
복술이 저런 풀링을 할 때 최대 DPS가 보통 한 80k 정도 되거든요. 7, 80k. 힐을 하면서 60k 정도 나왔으니까 거의 힐 안 하고 딜만 했다고 볼 수 있어요. 이 정도면은. 이게 복술이 힐을 조금이라도 하기 시작하면은 한 3, 40k 때까지 떨어지는데 그만큼 뭐 딜러나 뭐 흡선이나 자경 같은 게 타이밍이 워낙 좋았고 그러니까 생존기 타이밍이 굉장히 좋았다는 거죠.
But Dismissed already has competed before in the MDI, actually in Shadowlands Season 3.
Their names did look familiar. There's a lot of teams like that in this bracket.
일단 디스미스도 같고요. 그냥 몽카가 얼마나 잘하는지 보시면 될 것 같아요.
The method team that's named Cheese.
이거는
And then also, of course,
하늘이 두 쪽 나도 못 따라갑니다. 이제.
This team kind of changes every year, but he always gets a lot of quality.
라디언트님 안녕하세요.
But we also have Thundered that has Maskin and Alex, which were on the team.
제가 말했잖아요. 몽카는 넘사벽이에요. 몽카는 넘사벽이에요. 네, 3경기는 그러니까 루비가 2경기라서 혹시나 루비에서 몽카가 자빠지면은 가능성이 있긴 한데. 허리님 안녕하세요. 네, 유튜브 있지?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Monka already on their pull to the right side boss here, gathering all of the trash up until that queen on the bridge as well. You can see they're struggling a little bit with Grievous, so their healer definitely.
방금 그 횃불이 힐러하고 전사하고 같이 굽혔는데 힐러 것만 해제한 거 보이죠? 이런 게 약간 해제 셀렉션인데.
Well, a lot of the other teams played Shaman, and now Moat is also adjusting to that new meta here in Temple, also playing that Rasta Shaman on their side. Mason actually dropping really low because of those torches.
지금 야드가 밑에 내려간 것 같은데? 잠깐만. 잘못 봤나?
Skipping. So a little bit of a struggle here, but it looks like they can finish this off. Also having that mass spell.
야드가 안 보이거든요. 제가 봤을 땐 야드가 밑으로 점프한 걸로 봤는데 저게 실수인지 아닌지. 야드가 돌아왔어요. 그쵸? 야드가 돌아왔어요. 야드가 발이 빠르니까 제가 봤을 때 야돌로 밑에 내려가서 랜드 팝업을 한 다음에 반대쪽으로 데려왔거나 아니면 그 숨으로 그 숨도 안 썼는데 팝업이 돼 있어요. 야드가 잡고 왔거든요. 저게 원딜이 깔짝깔짝 되면서 처리하려면 시간이 좀 걸리니까 야드가 내려가서 아예 잡고 올라온 것 같아요. 일단은 남들 그 다른 팀과 다른 포인트가 하나 나왔어요. 야드가 그냥 내려가서 야돌로 잡고 왔어요. 네, 내려갈 수도 있는지는 몰랐네요. 그러니까 제가 말했잖아요. 그러니까 몽카는 뭔가 다른 거를 하나는 보여줘. 하나는 보여줬다 일단. 그 야드가 발이 빠르잖아요. 네. 일단 하나 보여줬다 하나. 아쉽다. 이거를 많이 봐야 되는데 몽카 경기를 많이 보고 싶다고 나는.
On this boss onto Maystine. It used to be on their DK first, and then they pass it to Maystine. Now it's on Skylark, but I guess it doesn't matter because the boss is about to die.
다 아는 얘기고 스카이라 모아드 크립스프 메이스틴도 들어본 적 있는데 야드 하시는 분 메이스틴 아는 사람인가요?
Pretty quickly here. This is the pull that I was talking about pre-dungeon here. This is where most teams are going to have the most issues, setting up for this massive pull on Fortified, especially with the affixes. That Grievous is going to start ticking the second one of the first explosions goes off.
세포로 풀링 빨리 하게 도와주고
every single one of their cooldowns to try to live through it. They're going to need to make sure that they stay inside the spirit link.
20단이긴 한데 경화예요.
Also have VE Nature's
아,
Vigil running for the most
야드 등판.
Here we go. The
태연민님.
first big explosions are going to start coming out here on the group. There's the spirit link. There's still a few more of them to deal
이번에도
with, but this is
똑같아요.
looking
경고
very
들어가면서
promising.
자경, 흡선,
That is
고인.
great execution from them there.
Yeah, really well done.
이게
Skylark
20단 경화라서 생각보다 아프거든요. 네, 블러드 키고 5분 남은 거예요. 지금 6분 됐어요.
See some knocks coming out as well from Maysteen to make sure those claws and haunted gazes are not going through on Skylark.
태연비님,
anymore.
촌피 어떻게 된 거야,
That's
촌피.
available. Only shades left.
촌피
and
어떻게
they
됐냐고.
immediately engage the boss as soon as it spawns here.
사고뭉치
I
촌피.
think- Yeah, they don't need the extra trash anymore from the side
네,
because they
촌피
know that they
떨어졌어요.
did not skip those pandas, so they don't necessarily need that. But it looks like they pulled it anyway. Yeah, there we go. So they did pull those two because they skipped the infestor.
촌피는 올라갈
There's also
뻔했는데
a map on
조금
the left
아깝게
side.
떨어졌어요.
They just gripped it in and silenced it to make sure the cast doesn't go off. So they're just going to deal with the rest of the trash they need on top of this boss, which can be a little bit dangerous because there's multiple debuffs going out in the group.
오케이,
Curses
메이스틴.
and also magic dispels on the tank as well. But they do have the extra curse spell from Maysteen on that druid, and they also have the master spell in case they need it for Skylarks as well. And of course,
몬카
Stalwart too.
지금 진행이 너무 물
But
흐르듯
very good sources that that button is not allowed for Feral to hit because it swaps.
포인트 하나까지 보여주면서
But he might be actually
태연비님 그 야드 특임 하나 나왔거든요. 앞에 보셨나?
rocked by Monka. They were actually using those just to funnel more damage onto the boss here. And I'm not
야드가
sure
내려가서 네임드 팝업
I think it's somewhere in the
네,
realm of like 14 to 15
앞으로
minutes.
야드 특임.
Skylark dropping low from the Jade Serpent kick. That's a lot of damage, but Mode is able to top him off.
근데 조적도 할 수 있겠는데? 그 밥 같은 걸로? 그 밥 있으면은? 야돌이 되면 그 밥도 되겠죠? 제 사거리가 25m밖에 안 되거든요. 아래 때리는 게. 제가 지난주에 막 용일로 해보려고 했는데 생각보다 막 엄청 쉽지는 않더라고요. 그게 막 힐을 해야 되는 상황에 아래쪽 시야 점프 하다가 파티원 피 다 막 다 걸레돼 있고.
They're just going through this dungeon so crazy fast. Like it's fast and smooth. I almost put those two words.
그러니까 디스미스트도 못하는 팀은 아니에요. 지난 대회 예선 10위 했던 팀인데 일단 첫 플링에서 미스가 있었으니까. 아 뭐야 20대 셌네.
A little bit slow, at least initially. We'll see. Skylark does have 2 charges of shield wall
근데
and last stand, so technically they could do a bit
이거를
more. It is
아쉽다고
also
해야
very
되는지
possible
각이
that
안 나온
Monka
건지는
is just a little
모르겠는데
bit slower here than they could technically go, because
단엠방은 한 방 안
at this point they'll
가고
know
두 번
that
나눠서
they're
가네.
really far ahead. So if they want to pull 1 by 1 here, that is totally fine, and they can just play it very clean here. Especially because, as you said, they don't have Bloodlust available. I do wonder, because they are so
밥은 안 나요,
close,
밥?
I wonder if there might be a team that actually doesn't use
야, 저렇게 밥
Bloodlust in the first
먹었으면
pool
그냥
and just,
향신료
like,
쓰지.
saves it for this big pool here.
네, 확인했을
But,
수도 있고.
we'll see. Because the first pool is also really dangerous if you don't have Bloodlust available. But Monka now pulling the
네,
rest
사실
of the
오늘
trash
예선
all
첫날이고
together. This is
어차피
gonna be
몬카가 올라갈 거라서
pretty difficult. So many
막 힘
shots
빼고
of
그럴
down
필요는
here,
없죠.
so much tank damage going out on Skylight as well, and so many Sha explosions from the infestor spawns too. So they have to use all of the defensives here. You can see the healing spells being used as well by Crims and Maysteen, and now they're pulling the boss on
근데
top
뭔가
because the mobs are a little bit
램드
lower.
붙이네요.
It definitely looks like they did it. I mean, there's only Shas left. The infestor
이거는
as well.
원한들이 남아 있잖아요. 저거 도시락으로 쓰라고 원한 있는 상태에서 램드 붙여준 것 같아요.
So really well done. But now they have to kite out those shades.
원한 제가 처음에도 얘기했지만 원하는 그저 도시락일 뿐.
A sub 12-minute dungeon here. I mean, obviously it's the lowest key level. It's fortified. I think we've only seen tyrannical of this dungeon, which is probably a little more difficult considering how dangerous the bosses are on this dungeon. But still, this is just a textbook dungeon from Monka. Literally.
맞아요. 그 백법로도 같이 쐐기 돌아보면은 원한 주간에 꼭 원한 나가 있을 때 바로 가달라고 그런 얘기를 하거든요. 이제 10분 막 지났어요. 이제 10분 15초. 본카 노데스. 너무 깔끔하죠. 단수가 20단밖에 안 되기는 하는데 정화인 거 감안하면은 난이도가 그러니까 발로 해도 될 수준은 아니에요. 좀 어려운 던전은 맞아요.
So really good timing on all of their offensives here. We will see. I mean, Moat's mana is also like totally fine for a 2045 Shadow of Doubt. No issue whatsoever. They have Master Spell, of course, to get rid of those magic debuffs too. They have the Dwarf Racials, or at least some of them available in case they need it. And yeah, it's looking crazy fast. I mean, even Moat is doing a lot of damage here, almost
맞아.
50k
제가 이번
DPS,
주에
on this
세계를
point.
좀 많이
So,
돌았는데
that's just insane speed.
복술도 한 2바퀴 돌았는데 만화가 엄청 힘들더라고요 이번 주가. 치명에 파열이 같이 있으니까 와 이게 만화가 막 말라가지고 고생을 좀 했어요.
An extremely impressive start to the weekend for Monka here with an 11-minute, 17-second Temple of the Jade Serpent. That was crazy fast.
Wow, yeah.
이번 주 그래서 만화세 만화 관련 특성을 조금 찍는 게 만화템 토템도 찍어야 될 것 같고. 네, 이번 주 저 사실 별거 아니겠지 하고 갔다가
Yeah, but then you probably have to do less boss damage while you're like cleaning up all.
이번 주는 힐도 약간 치파보다는 티물을 조금 많이 써야 되는 그런 주간인 것 같아요.
That sounds really, really nasty. Here's a look at
이건 뭐 그냥
the replay we've got from this one, of course.
너무 원사이드.
First pull, we talked about it being a little bit less lethal than last weekend, but I'm not surprised that it is still quite lethal, right? This is one of the nastier pulls that gets done in the MDI. Very, very deadly combination of enemies. But credit to Monka for making it work out pretty well. They of course have that Spirit Link Totem, which does a lot of work against.
용일은 만화 안 말라요. 그러니까 뭐 단수가 올라가면 모르겠어요. 단수가 올라가면 뭐 마를 수도 있는데.
By the time that stuff expires, it's just already all dead, right? You have just the spiteful.
이번 주에 손팟을 좀 많이 돌았거든요. 용일로는. 뭐 20단에서는 만화 뭐 안 말르더라고요.
By Monka getting right into the boss as early as possible, and then of course courtyard pull. You know, it's sure it's a little bit.
확실히 그러니까 힐을 좀 많이 해야 돼가지고 딜은 별로 안 올랐어요.
Exploding Shaw here. 15 of them in here, so very, very
이게 막
combination of things.
손팟이라 막 그 딜러들이 그거를 안 해줘요. 파열국 같은 거 안 해줘요. 막 파열 막 8중, 9중, 10중 막 이렇게 계속 올려대가지고 좀 피곤하긴 했는데.
Yeah, of course.
그래.
You know, bit of a tougher map for the competition here for Dismissed, but I think Dismissed did a good job as well. You know, they weren't that far behind. And
글로벌에선 그러면은 그냥 죽이거든요. 글로벌에서 죽이는데 이놈의 씨. 뭐 다 아는 사람들끼리 보는 거니까. 그런 거 있죠. 아는데 친한 사람들이 있고. 아는데 친하지는 않은 그런 사람들 있잖아요. 그러니까 뭐 완전 가까운 사이는 아니고. 네, 정화 정지장에 3개 다 다른 사람한테 써야 돼요. 그걸로 파열 해제 3명 돼요. 근데 그거보다 그냥 정지장을 힐로 쓰는 게 더 맞는 것 같아요. 그래서 저도 이번 주에 정지장 거의 쿨마다 돌리거든요.
They would need to play a team that could, actually, kind of force them to do that. I think we'd have to wait until later in the weekend for something like that to happen. This is more of like what the kind of difference you'd expect between. Like,
그래서 이번 주 정기장 제일 좋은 콤보는 풀스택 꿈숨.
Showcase of what Monka can do. This team is, again, we keep saying it, they're the team that can compete with Echo.
풀스택 꿈숨이 무조건 하나 들어가는 게 좋고.
New to the scene compared to those two teams, right? To see them start off the weekend that way, bodes well for the competition.
뭐 나머지는 뭐 그냥 적당히.
Just a casual 207k overall DPS by RX. I mean, no big deal.
That's crazy. Unbelievable amounts of overall coming.
시간 차이가 너무 많이 나서 몽칸 여기서 끝났어.
They did all the dungeons so quickly, right? They did all the damage in such a short time. That's going to make DPS.
11분 17초.
Look at the spikes on that graph. 4 separate times they spike over 1 million DPS as a group. That is.
이번 주 파열은 진짜 나만 해제. 제일 중요해요. 4해제. 그리고 약간 용비느라고 그 소생? 용비느라고 소생이 있을 때는 해제 1명 주고.
This series is not over just yet. It is, of course, a best of 3, which means Up
그냥
next is
벽이죠,
the
벽.
other time trial dungeon. We're going to be venturing to the Ruby Light
디스미스
Pools.
뭐 계속 보진 않았지만 커플링 이후로도 계속 사고가 있었던 것 같아요. 뭐 잠깐 봤을 때 20대 쓰고 막 그랬으니까.
dungeon than the 20 fortified temple, at least in my opinion. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that 20
그러니까 확실히
level, right, is always more dangerous. But then on top of that, having
용일은 숨 참았다가 힐 올라가고 숨 참았다가 힐 올라가고 이런 식이잖아요. 근데 복술 같은 경우는 쿨기를 켰을 때는 계속 힐 힐 힐 힐 힐 힐 약간 이런 느낌이거든요. 10초 동안은 진짜 계속 힐이 센 그런 느낌이라 옥룡사 같은 던전은 복술이 그런 부분에 좀 좋은 것 같아요.
If you bolster up the destroyers and then they cast an inferno, that can be pretty dangerous. And then, of course, the bosses themselves also taking quite a while on a 22.
그러니까 뭐 TV 깔아놓고 뭐 캐스팅 적당히 땡기면은 진짜 힐이 0. 뭐 한 5초에서 0.8초마다 계속 힐이 들어가는 느낌? 맞아요. 근데 그런 쿨기들 빠지면은 이제 쿨기가 빠지면은 그때부터 이제 용일이 유리하고. 그래서 이번 주 복술이 조금 힘든 것 같아요. 그러니까 치명 때문에 계속 피 빠지는 게 있으니까. 와, 그 타락 영향 먹는 이번 주에 진짜 딜러들 타락 영향 먹으면은 힐러가 진짜 지랄할 수도 있어요. 성격 구린 힐러면. 이번 주는 진짜 인간적으로 양심적으로 타락 영향 먹지 말자.
Going back on live, 5+ years, being one of the top M plusers on that spec, so could be a great time for modes to deploy.
타락이 뭐 무슨 업타임 같은 게 있는 거예요?
I don't know. I think there's a good chance we will see it in this dungeon. I hope so. I think it's a really cool build.
아까
You have that fire mage just pumping prior.
글로벌 갔다가 타락 영향 먹는 사람 한 명 있어가지고.
I don't know.
I don't think we're gonna.
저야 뭐
Why not?
맞아, 이번 주 암사가 진짜 너무 좋죠, 파열에.
The key level's high enough, and it's also tyrannical, right? So I don't think bolstering is really that much of an issue.
타락 영향
Damage out
본
of Shadow Priest and your
그
Fair
디버프 딱 보일 때마다
like
진짜
to see it. I don't think. Okay, never mind. I'm wrong. Okay,
Let's go.
whatever.
Let's go.
Doesn't make any sense, but I'm happy to see it. Let's see.
뭐
what
그냥
the
렛츠고
fire
이러고
mage
있네.
is. It's something that's come up a lot in the past.
어디까지 가나요?
Especially if you've been watching
어디까지 가나요?
to high push keys. Let's see what kind of peaks this can hit, and of course, we see the
일단
Discord go alongside the Fire
아
Mage. Fire Mage needs the power.
팝업이 나왔어요. 이거는
To the very first
강화 픽스에 대한 그거 같아요. 강화 픽스의 메인 타겟 점사로 화법을 데리고 온 것 같고. 근데 딜이 화법 1등인데? 사제? 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 이거 즐겜 한판 하겠다. 마주 셔틀하면서 내 아이덴티티 사제 한판 하겠다.
They're just gonna go ahead and move on to the mini boss afterwards and leave this trash behind.
지금 이 강화 때문에 이거 얼음화살 쏘는 애 보이시죠?
By the time these mobs actually get to Skylark, he's gonna be on the other side of the boss, and that bolstering will be almost all gone. Yeah, look at these mobs. They're normal.
터지던 말건 나는 자원으로 쓰겠다.
Yeah, I mean that's
램드
of course
땡겼죠?
great, the changes to bolstering, making sure that they actually run out, that there's a timer
이제
in it.
이
And of course,
거인 한
bolstering
마리
is not
데리고
a
지금
boss anymore either.
거인도
But
그저
one
자원일
of the
뿐.
boss is getting bolstered quite a bit from some of these mobs that they had still up. So that means it's pretty dangerous for Skylark because this
최상위권 팀의 화법은 다르다.
with that tank attack that it's casting. So they have to be a little bit careful to make sure Skylark doesn't
점점
really
작아지고
use
있어.
all of those bolstering stacks.
용-
But some of them
용가리
actually
키가 작아지고
run
있어요.
out just now as you see them up getting smaller and smaller. So they should be okay now.
아, 해설도 얘기를 하네요. 스몰러. 작아지고 있다고.
How's Fire Mage on 2-target cleave? I mean, we do know that, of course, Unholy BK and also Feral can be pretty good at that. Fire Mage, I mean, not having Combust ready right now, so we don't necessarily are going to see big numbers there. But because the damage meter didn't reset, because it was one continuous fight for them since the start of the dungeon, we're still just going to see Crims at the top there. Because
수사도 무빙일 나쁘지 않네요. 아니에요. 모하드 무빙일이 나쁘지 않네요라고 말씀해 주실래요? 모하드는 그냥 수사가 아니거든요.
believe it or not, Fire Mage does actually get a little bit of funnel.
얘는 수사가 아니에요. 그냥 모아드예요, 모아드.
It's not a
그냥
lot,
젤리아 같은
it's
애예요, 얘는.
1% per mob, but it does exist. But all of the mobs are dead after he combusts, so you hate to see it. But he does have the power infusion as a little, compensation, and he should have the remnant of this combust with all of the SKB procs he's getting on this next set of whelps. These whelps should go down very, very quickly. And the great thing is the Fire Mage is focusing the boss the whole time, so this next shield should die quickly too.
Maybe
당장
they should play disc and
모아드
shadow
잘하는데
single of the mage
님들
and
이번 주에 루비 22단 수사랑 한번 가보실래요?
I'm
글로벌에서?
happy that Crims is taking that PI all of the time.
Now the mage would just want both PIs. We both know that's how it works.
Good point. It looks like Dismissed did make it to Melee Dress as well. Now they did save Bloodlust actually all the way for the boss. They didn't do as big of a pull early on as we saw Monka doing, so they didn't have to.
모아드도 약간 그 모든 힐러 캐릭을 다 자유자재로 다룰 수 있는
First, they're a little bit behind in the dungeon, but also actually Kevin.
최상위권 힐러 유저예요.
Battle rush that they're committing immediately, and they have to make sure that no one dies from here on out because they're not going to have a rest for a long time. But then additionally, they're also missing a lot of trash percentage. There's a big difference in trash here. Dismissed has to play a lot more later on, while Monka can actually skip quite a lot.
Ooh. A lot of
근데
damage
제가 궁금한 거는
was able to keep the group alive, and that is important.
진짜 강화 때문에 화법을 들고 나온 건지
This comes from the fact that Mode was actually a priest main back in Shadowlands, right? I think a lot of healers didn't really play too much priest in Shadowlands.
이게 보통 화법을 쓰는 경우에는 야드가 빠지고 화법이 들어오거나 그랬잖아요.
For Mode when it comes to disc priest play. It's good to see that he's comfortable playing it still, because it does seem like it's a really good niche pick for these dungeons where you do want to play Fire Mage, but you don't
제가
necessarily
뭐
have
혹시나 루비에서 삐끗하면은
slot in a Shadow Priest. It's working out for them nicely so far.
그래도 디스미스트가 승산이 있다 뭐 그런 얘기를 했었는데 예, 뭐 그럴 일 1도 없을 것 같네요. 한번 전멸해도 몽카가 앞서는 상황이에요 지금.
I don't think they meant to. It had the
I think that was a
mind suit on it.
mistake.
That must have been an
Yeah.
interval, unfortunately.
자, 구르는 천둥은 아마 대무 쳐줄 거고요. 용을
I
잡네요.
also believe that was maybe not intended by Monka, and it looks like they are just gonna solo it even. It is a 22, even though it is not fortified.
아 위안 걸어놨는데 스킵하려다 사고 났어요.
Especially with bolstering, seems like that's not something you want to do. Because these debuffs, the magic debuffs, are doing so much damage.
폭군이라 강화 폭군이라서 사실 구르는 천둥의 앞에 쳐도 될 것 같은데 강화라서 약간 그냥 안전하게 가는 것 같아요. 어차피 뭐 첫 경기 저기 한 거 없으니까. 아까 옥룡사도 그렇고 몽카가 그냥 안전하게 가네요. 몽카가 약간 무리한 플링 하다가 미끄러졌던 적이 많이 있어가지고 이번 대회 마인드를 약간 이렇게 잡고 온 것 같은데 억을 한번 튄 것 같네요.
Does end up using the pain suppression. I don't know if it's on himself or on Skylark to help set up this.
이게
nasty pull.
파괴자 두 마리인데 지금 강화예요. 파괴자 두 마리인데 강화예요.
And the feral druid, so they have vampiric embrace and the nature's vigil. Mode does have his own vampiric embrace, but I'm actually not sure how strong that is for disc compared to Shadow Priest. I'd imagine
이게 뭐 그냥 MDI에서 다들 하는 플링이라 쉬워 보이지만 지금 강화인 거 확인하셔야 돼요.
The ticking damage is dropping everyone low, but Mode's doing a great job at keeping everybody alive. There's the second Inferno, plus the living bomb on Mode again. He is running out of buttons. He still has that one extra charge of pain suppression.
와 동시에 화염 파괴자 두 마리 동시에 녹았어. 수사가 살리는 것도 신기하고 이 피를 동시에 맞췄어요. 두 무리를 붙였는데 화염 파괴자 두 마리가 동시에 죽고 옆에 있는 쫄들은 심지어 먼저 녹지도 않았어. 이런 광딜러들이 있는데 이거는 진짜 좀 많이 연습이 돼 있을 거예요. 딜 분배가. 그거를 도적 대신 화법이 역할을 해주는 거고요. 보통 글로벌에선 도적이 그런 역할을 하잖아요. 그러니까 뭐 이렇게 붙이건 말건 그냥 파괴자가 먼저 죽어요. 이거는 확실히 어픽스 때문에 화법이 나온 것 같은 느낌이 드는데
even though they would
다른
survive
어피스 때
bolsters
루비에서
time, right?
몽카가
It's not
조합을
that they
어떻게
would
들고
wipe
올지 좀
just because one is
궁금하거든요.
bolstered, but it's just for efficiency, right? You don't want to deal with that extra HP the mobs are getting, so really
이
well
작은
executed
쫄들은
by
어차피
Monka.
강화를 안
And
먹기
now
때문에
that the dragon is gone, really good timing for them
많이
too. They
달고
just
가면
walk
갈수록 다
through,
자원이죠.
not to walk around or anything like that. And now they're pulling all of those scorchlings onto the destroyer. It looks like they're pulling it even further. They also pulled this patrol on top of it as well. I was thinking that they maybe can skip this patrol here.
몽카 지금 뭐 마음 같아서는
because they have
램드
that extra
붙여가고
trash now with the
싶겠지만
Thunderhead.
이 맵에 있는
They
화염
will sit here
파괴자들이
just
다
to
죽어야
wait.
램드 팝업이 되기 때문에
Also, it's so messed up that they'll just pull Thunderhead for fun, but they won't pull Flame Goulet for fun. Like, let your healer have
Right?
some fun. That's one of the real
Yeah.
DPS checks in this dungeon. Also, if you really want to make it fun, you could bolster it up a bunch too. Like, yo, Crims, turn around and tag it right now. I'm sure it's flying through.
확실히 바라 없는 타이밍에는 팝업 딜이
They could
좀
tag it now and then put
많이
it on the
밀리긴 하네요.
boss. So Mode really has something to do.
전체 딜이 조금 궁금하네요.
Apparently they
Guess
don't
not.
want to have fun.
커플링에 딜파이 먹은 걸로
They
얼만큼
are just moving on. Pulling the boss now. 82% trash. So they actually have a
지금
lot of
병력차
trash.
40% 차이 나는데
We'll see what's
디스미스트도
later
1
on. We don't
됐으면
have
뭐
a
그렇게
rover first, so no
그냥
shrines available.
자기들
And
계획대로
they
가고
still
있는
have to
거예요.
save their invisibility pots if they want to go past some of this trash. Otherwise, I mean they have Mind Soothe.
여기
but I don't
봐봐요.
think there's really
세
anything
마리가
in Mind Soothe because it's just
한 팩인데도 화염 파괴자가
I mean, look at the boss damage though. They're
늦게
absolutely
죽잖아요.
blasting this boss
한
when it's
팩인데도.
going to tyrannical. Wow.
근데 몽카는
27% on that
2팩
first.
플러스 그러니까 3팩을 붙였는데도 화염 파괴자가 먼저 죽었거든요. 이게 약간
Fire Mage and Unholy Decay are both absolutely insane.
말 그대로 체급차?
Damage. I didn't quite actually see here. I would guess that the Power Infusion actually went on the Unholy Decay here.
한 팩을 풀링해도 피가 안 맞는 디스미스트하고 세 팩을 풀링해도 피를 맞추는 몽카.
So, yeah, I would imagine that's where it went, and that's why the Unholy Decay was topping damage meters. But Fire Mage, man, it can just do so much damage, especially when it's given a free Ignite Cleave target like this.
램드 딜은
They can just do so much damage. Both classes still doing over 90k with.
이게 아마 쫄 딜은 부족이 높을 건데 램드 딜은 화법이 더 셀 거예요
Yeah,
이게.
pretty insane. As Crimson's combustion is
근데
coming
발화
up as
끝나서
well,
지금
immediately popping that as the ad is about to spawn. too.
야드한테
So that
따라잡히나
means
이거?
they're gonna be dealing with that ad very quickly as well, while also blasting the boss still. Just really fast on this boss. I mean, absolutely insane. The Inferno's being healed by Moat as well. Not too big of an issue. It looks like Moat is also still doing a lot of single target damage too.
헤일로가
36k
분파인가?
DPS, almost matching Skylark's DPS there on the Prod Warrior. So really well done. How much damage do I mean, Rest of Shaman is definitely going to do a little bit more damage, right? But considering that you provide PI to the group, I would say it's probably going to add up to more overall.
아 헤일로가 후광이에요?
Yeah, that's probably right. Yeah, we'll see. Unsurprisingly, yeah, Power Infusion has only gone to the mage this dungeon. Although I think that is incorrect in this scenario. I think it's better to go on the Unholy Decay on single target on the boss like this. But you know, that's okay. You know, I understand.
수사는 진짜 제가 스킬을
Just only hitting the max.
정조 말고 아무것도 몰라가지고
Although, isn't Mode known for using PvP style binds in PvE where he actually has a macro to target?
제가 진짜 그게 맞아요. 저도 지금 마지막 플레이 좀 궁금하거든요. 이게 강화라서
Yeah. He's got such an interesting
이게 역술사, 그러니까 폭풍 역술사 한 마리라도 강화하면 그게 또
I watched the stream
그거대로
and
위기라서.
whenever he explained it to some viewers, and he just basically said that it's a different style.
그러니까 라이바티도 강화를 먹으면 안 되는데 폭풍 역술사도 강화를 먹으면 안 되거든요.
PvP, right? It's just because I mean it requires extra bindings. You need to remember more bindings. But overall, I think they actually pulled something that they didn't want to. Sorry, going back
아
to the
폭풍
game, it
역술사
was
한
like
마리네요.
maybe
풀링이.
added some
폭풍 역술사 한 마리에 붙여가나? 중복 붙여가나? 아, 안 붙여가네. 안 붙여가네, 안 붙여가. 까비? 네, 준수님 물어보세요.
They had the mind soothe on the Halo.
네, 기대했는데
on the Storm Warriors.
까비.
Mode just rips a Halo.
안전하게 가네요.
I mean,
Oh well.
it's
Just pull
just for a good
everything.
measure, you know. Just go 120% trash, just like a.
이게
quick start
근데
Okay.
3일 동안 해야 돼서 체력 관리 이렇게 하는 게 맞아요.
Do you know which player we have the camera on? Is this?
That's Maysteen, I think.
That's
아 그게 그
Yeah.
기둥에 올라갔을 때 기둥의 사이드로 가면 안 되고 기둥에 어느 정도 중앙에 있어야 돼요.
they're taking
그리고 탱커가 풀링하면서
Yeah.
한 대라도
I
다
think
쳐야
it's the same
되고
situation again. Like, I do think that
힐러가
Temple,
먼저
even though the
탱커한테
Temple
어글이
seems
한번
faster,
들어가야
I
돼요.
think they could have done it even a little bit quicker.
이게
If they were,
원딜들은 전부 다 한 대
if they
치기가
know that they're
힘드니까
so far ahead.
힐러가
I think it's the
탱커한테
same
힐 한
thing
번
here.
넣고
So,
나서
I mean, of
그때
course they made the
딜
mistake
시작하면
with
되거든요.
Dragon. So
두
obviously
가지
it would have
정도겠네.
been faster if that wouldn't have happened.
원딜이
And
그러니까
additionally,
원딜이나
I think
힐러가
that
먼저 어글을
would have been
먹었는지,
faster if they weren't so far ahead compared to Dismissed.
그러니까 몹들한테
But one
인식이
thing to
됐는지,
note is
그리고
the mistake
기둥
with
위에
Dragon,
좀 가운데
they,
지점으로
this
올라가는지,
is like
그게
a
살짝
perfect
사이드로 가면은
final or
뛰어요
you
원딜한테.
know, where they
맞지?
play against cheese, then they can't necessarily afford a mistake like that. So that is definitely something they have to work on, and that can't happen maybe in the next series. So definitely something they have to watch out for. But other than that, they're super clean. I mean, they still have 0 deaths. They had 0 deaths in the temple and 0 deaths
디스미스
in
네임드
the
잡네.
dungeon as well. But disaster for Dismissed, unfortunately, as they have a full wipe on that second boss. They are, I mean, they were really far behind already, but yeah, this is
그거 저만 원딜 때는 거기 올라가요.
If they lose against Monkey here, they're of course going to drop down into the lower bracket. They're not going to be out
네,
of the
맞아요.
tournament yet. But yeah, having a full wipe here in the boss is not necessarily going to be great for their mental.
그러니까 탱이 풀링하면서 모든 몹에 그 딜이 들어가는 그런 스킬 있잖아요. 그걸 한 번 정도 써주면 좋아요.
I think it's going to happen anyway.
뭐 보기 같은 경우는 그냥 오는 길에 신성화 깔아놓으면 되고, 전사 같은 경우는 쇠날 같은 거 오는 길에 한번 던져주면 좋고, 그리고 힐러는 그 상태에서 이제 탱커가 힐 사거리에 들어오면은 뭐 작은 힐 스킬 하나 정도 던져주고 그때 딜 시작. 디스미스도 친근하죠? 근데 이게 친근해 보여도 14분이면은 그래도 글로벌 치고는 꽤 빠른 편이라.
Saving that bloodlust for when one of the bosses gets to 50% and they enter that intermission phase where Karaka starts putting out multiple of those flame spit debuffs on the group here. I'm sure we'll see at any moment now as the bosses do approach that 50% mark. There is the lust, the double lust for Crims coming out here. No.
디스미스 용일로도 못 살린 이넴을 몽카는 수사로 가볍게 살려버리는.
It looks like the PI actually went on somebody else.
몽카 지금
Looks like it went on
화염액 한
RX
두 번,
here.
두세 번 바람이 세 번까지도 보거든요.
Yeah, there we go. They listened to you, Cyro. They were listening to our cast, and Mode was like, "Oh, I should PI RX during army. Okay, well, let's do that for the last boss." And there we
번째
go.
화염액.
100k DPS coming out of the
오우 씨.
and the Feral and
22단 폭군이라 그래도 화염액 데미지가 세요. 이거 한 번 더 보면은 살릴 거 있나?
Up to 100k DPS on this boss. Absolutely crazy damage coming out of Monka here.
There you go. Dragon is down, and all that's left is Earhart Stormvane. Just gonna make sure you dispel that Stormslam debuff on Skylar.
딜러들이 알아서 살았다고 하기에는 법사 시돌도 안 빠졌고 야드
There's the dispel. And the
낙겁도 안
boss is dead,
빠졌고
and that's
생본도 안
going to be
빠졌고.
very clean. Zero death for the entire series. 2-0 victory for Monka, starting off the weekend strong.
그쵸, 막내 용안 찍고 그냥 이타게 치죠. 그러니까 최대한 빨리 딜할 수 있는, 때릴 수 있는 거 때리는 MDI니까.
Well played by
수사로
Monka in a 2-0 victory over Dismissed. Credit though to Dismissed once again.
팝업 딜 좀 볼까요? 전체 딜은 어떨지 모르겠네. 커플링 105만?
That first pull though, look at this bolstering just fiasco that somehow Monka have as part of their plan and have under
이게 불기둥 발화도 아니고 불작 발화였을 텐데 당연히 피 맞추려고.
Trying to outrange the bolstering onto the mini boss for as many of these mobs dying as possible. I suspect that in practice they sometimes have more of those killed or lower on health because this thing does end up taking some of those bolstering stacks, and for a little while here this looks pretty.
슈퍼 용가리도 그저 자원일 뿐.
Of course, bolstering doesn't affect bosses, so it's relatively
이렇게
directly into
여태까지
the
나왔던
boss.
MDI 팀들 중에서 용가리를 풀피에 붙이는 팀은 없었거든요.
Between, the mini boss and boss
어느 정도 피를 빼고 다
mechanics,
붙였었는데
really deadly.
풀피에 그냥 쿨하게
It's a really
붙여버리네.
large mini boss right now, so I'm impressed that this worked out for Monka, and I'm curious just how like
이게 강화인데 용가리 풀피에 붙였다는 거는
is the fact that some of those are coming in late.
이게 다른 어픽스였으면 그냥 다 갔다가 1렘 바로 갔을 수도 있다는 얘기거든요.
boy, from my perspective, it did look scary. Of course, you can see on the damage meters here on this poll that Fire Mage overall just insane, but also a lot of that is being dealt to that high prio target, right? We saw that Juggernaut dying.
화법의
first
데미지가 뭐
in the
미쳤다 뭐
takeover,
그런 얘기를 하네요.
probably because it was the one that was eating the bulk of that combustion, right?
Yep, exactly. I mean, that's why, you know, going back to week
확실히
one, I was
뭔가
sure that this was going to see a lot of
보는
players
맛.
specifically because every single one of these pulls has one of those prio mobs to hit. The destroyers up
이거
here.
누가 헤드 냈어?
Even the big
팽이 헤드
dragons,
냈네.
if you do choose to pull them,
Yeah.
you know what I think happened there? Was it that Maestein was in Prowl, and because Thunderhead does see stealth, that his aggro radius is larger for stealth classes, so we ended up seeing Maestein?
Yeah, it was either that.
Scorchling was at it, no?
수사 40K였나요?
I think it might have been
Body
Scorchling, maybe?
a body pulled Scorchling that then ran close enough to Thunderhead that it pulled the mob that way. Not 100% sure. Here again, you can see some Mindsoothe mobs getting added to a
그쵸?
poll.
다 딜장신구이지 않을까요? 아 맞아, 징표에 뭐 하나겠죠?
Monka can maybe look to improve. You know, something that could maybe make their timer a little bit better was, but big credit to them. I mean, of course,
루비에서
when you have things getting pulled that aren't supposed to get pulled is very impressive
40K?
out of them. But I do think that means there's probably a minute.
수사도
maybe
뭔가
half
그런 게
game
있나?
in this
천별
dungeon
같은 게
just
있나?
not pulling Thunderhead, right?
잘 모르겠네.
having that last
강 데미지가
pull,
그냥
so
보통
I guess
거는 거
the
말고
last pull
없지
maybe was
않나요?
supposed to be bigger, but because they had the Thunderhead count, they didn't get those two warriors, and then they came in anyways. I'm not sure. And then, of
아,
course,
타겟
the
제한
last
없는
boss,
스킬이 뭐가
Mini
있어요?
Tyrannical does not mess around, but neither do Monka. Ended
아,
up taking that
맞아.
one. You can see the
힐러들 다
damage
나자게트 장신
are
웃기더라고요.
in that temple, but that's not surprising given that it's a longer dungeon, a higher key level. Still very impressive. The not too shabby 175K
화법이 1등이네요. 와,
out of Crim's Mage.
이게 화법이 1등인 건 조금 놀라운데요?
Well.
난 전체 딜은 그래도 부족이 높을 줄 알았는데
Overall damage out of Monka and 36k DPS from the Disc Priest.
아 정분 죽음이 광딜 들어가요?
Power infusion is another thing to me that
셔플링이 약간
I think there
Crim's
might
doing
have been
the
a
lowest.
little...
야 진짜 오르지도 못할 라문데 이거는?
What were you going to say about
Okay, Nagura first. Go ahead.
you first.
I just
그러니까
want to
이번
say that Crim's
대회에서
doing the
전체
lowest
부족을
HPS,
이기는
and I
전체
think
딜
he's
처음 나온 것
part of that
같아요.
one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He could be putting up better alter times, that's for sure. I was going to say
Agreed.
that
아,
Crim's
아,
might be
맞네.
talking a little bit
마주가 하나인데 그게 화법한테 들어가서 그럴 수도 있. 야 근데 화법 나오면 원래 마주는 법사거든.
There are a couple of classes in the game that actually
마주는
have
법사거지 원래.
priority for power infusion over fire mage.
아, 마주 차이가 커요?
Army of the Dead and Devastation Evokers most of the time actually have really high usage of power infusion because their main cooldown is 2-minute lines up with power
근데
infusion.
부족도 보면은 아무리 빅풀을 해줘도 100만 찍는 딜러는 드물었거든요.
Ellie Shaman actually makes great use of power infusion. But there were still
심지어 알게타르 대학 셔플링에도 100만 찍은 부족 별로 없지 않나요?
But they did end up giving him the PI on the final boss, so I like to see that with the lust, making sure the Unholy DK gets his moment to shine. Little optimizations can be made, but it was still.
아 맞아, 제가 이번 주에
Does that change at all when you have like second targets for
네
Ignite
방금
spread on
화법
two?
100만
Does
나왔어요.
that make
105만.
Mage back up to being the best one, or is it still?
아 근데 제가 지난주 그러니까
just
어픽스 바뀌기 전에
based?
배부형하고 알게타르 대학 25단 갔는데 파흑이 나무 풀링 할 때 130만 130만이었나? 아무튼 100만 넘었거든요.
Very interesting.
파흑.
Yeah, the Lust combo. Lust is an interesting one as well because Lust gives you a bunch of haste. Power
네,
infusion.
마주 같은 거 없죠. 제가
Some classes
용일이었는데
that are like, okay, I've already got enough haste from this Lust. I don't need this PI.
블러드
right?
끼고
And then there's some classes that are like, oh wow, I've got.
뭐 25단 경화니까 먹을 게
Yeah,
많긴 했을
so I'll just
거예요.
multiply together and be.
파흑이 진짜 다수 타겟방이 세긴
That's
세더라고요.
always an interesting thing to look at whenever we've got priests in our groups.
그래서 그 벌이 원래 경화 때 3마리씩만 가잖아요. 실수로 3마리가 더 왔는데 그 풀링이 2분 안에 끝났어요. 영상 있는데.
We'll see how that works out as we are going to be heading over to the Thundered versus Bone Buds matchup next. This is actually our closest matchup of the day on paper. Our 11th and 15th seeded overall teams. Should be a pretty interesting one to watch between the two teams. Here you can see some of the players on Thundered. Of course, our players are allowed to be streaming on Twitch as well while they're competing, so always worth going to those channels, throwing them a follow, and seeing if they're live. I'm not actually sure if any players from these two teams are live currently, but here are the the Bone Buds lineup. This is our 15th seeded team overall.
여기도 100만 넘었네요. 보세요 이거 빅터기.
Yeah, they're going to be our two teams up next in the upcoming series.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a
130만 은 아니고 100만 은 넘었네.
Their dungeon pool. Some dungeons in there are definitely really high. Like we've seen
네, 100만,
62,
105만,
22 dungeons and
107만,
1 dungeon, and they can run
108만.
3 dungeons. So that means we're definitely gonna see at least one of
제가
those
실제로 파리
high
에드네스 지금
tiers
파리가
like the
6마리거든요.
that we've already seen, or the academy, and both of those actually have bolstering in there, which I think a lot of the teams we've asked them questions before the tournament.
보드 별거
almost all of the teams said
없더라라고
their
파악이
dungeons that
얘기하는.
are the most dangerous are the high keys, but also bolstering keys.
뭐
and
이것도
safe
나름
keys.
MDI 플리 같지 않나요?
Those are the two affixes that they're most
아
afraid of.
존나 아파 진짜
So
이거.
this dungeon pool here for match
이거
2 is
분노잖아요. 분노의
very
경화잖아요. 이거는 사실 살린 나한테도 칭찬을 좀 해줘야 된다.
Works out as well. They do have the Azure Vault unbannable.
팔이 6마리거든요.
So that's going to be
네, 아무도 안
pretty
죽었어요.
exciting one to start off our series. We are, however, going to go to a brief break before we get to that one. Don't go anywhere.
뭐 이거 살리면서 나도 80K 했으니까 뭐 나도 나도 조금 칠 줄 안다. 이렇게 깨알 어필 시간을 잠깐 가져봤고요. 파악도 100만이 나오더라. 몽카 이제 보려면 하루 기다려야 돼. 이게 에코 경기할 때도 그랬잖아요. 첫 경기 보고 눈 겁나 높아져가지고 다음 경기 막 이러셨을 텐데. 에코도 보여줬다면은 몽카도 그래도 보여줬죠? 화법하고 수사로 보여줬죠. 진짜 말도 안 되는 루비에서 화법 수사라니 이거를 누가 상상할 수 있어요? 사실 탱커도 이거 버티는 게 말이 안 돼요. 저렇게 강화 먹는 얼음화살들 이거 100%짜리 안 될 텐데. 그 와중에 깨알 하고 진짜 수사를 어떻게 살리지? 그쵸. 보기가 지금 뭐 아무리 고단해서 많이 쓴다고 해도 와 탱커 피 빠지는 거 봐, 방금. 강화 먹은 용갈이 콤보 스킬에 와 탱 뚝배기 터질 뻔했죠 방금. 예, 아시겠지만 이게 네임드도 굉장히 아파요. 램드도 아파. 뭐 딜러가 아무리 그러니까 쐐기가 아무리 딜러 노름이다 뭐 그런 얘기를 하는데 딜러가 놀라면 탱일이 안정적이어야 되는데 스카이락 그 몽카 탱일은 나오 젤리아만큼이나 딜러들도 지금 잔실수 거의 없는 것 같고. 뭐 단수가 높진 않지만 그래도 두 경기에서 노데스거든요 지금 몽카가. 두 경기에서 노데스 했다는 거는 딜러 힐러 뭐 가리지 그러니까 탱커 딜러 힐러 가리지 않고 전부 다 생존기 맞게 딱딱 올렸고. 제가 되게 계속 강조하는 게 흡선하고 작용인데, 흡선하고 작용이 나 쿨 켰다고 키는 게 아니고 진짜 힐러가 원하는 타이밍에 올라와줘야 돼요. 안 그러면 켜도 의미가 없어. 만피 때 흡선 작용 힐 뭐 백날 들어가봐야 뭐해. 아무리 그 타이밍이 세다고 해도. 당연히 쿨기 키고 처음에 흡선 작용 올리는 게 힐이야 많이 들어가겠지. 근데 다 만피인데 올려주면 아무 무슨 의미가 있냐고. 디스미스드 지금 보니까 용일이 실수를 살짝 했네요. 그러니까 교감 타이밍인데 딜러들이 죽었잖아요. 저거는 생명결속 작업을 안 쳐놓고 교감이 올라간 것 같아요. 그러니까 생명결속이 진짜 두 명한테만 발려도 한 명도 안 죽거든요. 그래서 교감 저런 식으로 급하게 돌려야 될 때는 작업을 메아리를 아무한테나 한 명 주고, 그러니까 딜러 중에 한 명 주고, 메아리가 안 발린, 그러니까 메아리가 안 발린 딜러한테 신품을 주면은 나 포함해서 이렇게 세 명이 묶거든요. 그러니까 변칙이 쿨일 때는 급하게 교감 쓰고 싶으면은 메아리 한 명한테 바르고 메아리 안 발린 딜러한테 신품 쓰고 그 다음에 교감 돌리면 돼요. 그러면 3결속 교감이니까 그걸로도 충분히 다 만피 돼요. 저런 반응 빠른 힐은 교감이 탑이긴 한데 교감은 4초밖에 안 돼가지고. 오늘은 누님 두 분이 다 나왔네. 나구라 누님도 나오고 미수 누님도 나오고.
We've been talking about what an exciting series we actually have coming up, and that's going to be Thundered versus Bone Buds. And both of these teams actually have a history in the MDI, right?
Yeah, so both Thundered and Bone Buds have played on previous teams. Thundered has three.
뭔가 두 번을 쓴 것 같기도 하고.
Members of Evolved, if you guys remember that team from last MDI, and Bone Buds has 4 of the 5 members from Soundproof. And this is kind of something that we talk about in the MDI a lot, and this is kind of the evolution that we want to see of the MDIs. Like the teams will end up staying together in some capacity, begin to grow and learn upon their previous MDI experiences, and then just come back the next season.
마법이 살짝 날아오르나?
Well, both of these teams are the 11th and 15th seeds, and they only had a minute separating them between time trials. So this, I mean, honestly, it should be a pretty close match.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think their Ruby life pulse was only like 2 seconds away from each other. But we have the team bans coming in, and I was kind of thinking.
두 번째 경기가 오늘의 미들층인데 양 팀이 11위 15위인가? 11위 14위인가 그래요.
The Ruby life pulse and the Alcathar Academy, and then they'll have Azur and Temple. But bans are going.
3경기에 나오는 치즈라는 팀이 예선 5위니까 3경기에서 조금 보시면 될 듯?
Oh man, I mean, they make total sense. Bolstering Algathar Academy is an entire extra beast, right? That is a nasty, nasty dungeon, especially with all the snap pulls that we know that are kind of becoming popular. If if you haven't seen the snap pulls, you should check out Dratnos' video covering it on the YouTube Warcraft channel. There's a great breakdown of that. But we're not going to see it here. Yeah, those affixes are really, really mean.
I'm actually kind of surprised with Temple the Jade Serpent ban. I guess it kind of makes sense if you're Bone Buds because they were a little bit behind in Temple the Jade Serpent just as like one of the time trial maps, and so like, oh yeah, you sit there, you think about it. Okay, Thundered is a bit ahead of us in that dungeon, so I guess the ban makes sense from a strategic standpoint. But the 22 Ruby Life Pools is typically the dungeon that you would see MDI teams be looking to ban because it's bolstering Tyran, and so that makes me wonder like how practiced are these teams on this bolstering Ruby Life Pools. This could be one that they're like kind of hoping the other team bans, but it may be a situation where they've had 3 weeks. Like they've probably put in a ton of practice, and one of the affix sets that you have to prepare special routes for is bolstering. So they definitely been preparing and practicing for multiple weeks for this matchup.
Definitely. I think both of the teams are something to look out for as we enter that Azure Vault here. Just a friendly reminder, since it is the first time we're seeing that dungeon, that's going to be a 21 Tyrannical Raging Storming, which I'm also like
하늘빛이 21단의 폭군이거든요. 그러니까 여태까지 대회에 나왔던 하늘빛 중에 어픽스가 제일 좋아요. 저는 이번 주에 몽카 하늘빛이 꼭 걸렸으면 좋겠네. 진짜 말도 안 되는 풀링 할 수 있는 어픽스거든요.
In the first round of any of them, and that makes sense because they're the closest seeded teams. But like you said, these guys are 1 seed apart. This is as close as it gets. Should be a banger of a series.
Whenever we sent out the player surveys for Group C, pretty universally teams cited Azure Vault as one of the easiest dungeons across the whole entire weekend. And now, I mean, that is due to the fact that it's a 21 Tyrannical Raging. This should be trash that gets absolutely obliterated as we have started this first.
1렘은 밑에 나무가 죽어야 돼요. 1렘 팝업 조건이 1층에 보면 이 나무 3마리가 있잖아요. 걔네가 죽어야지 팝업이 돼요.
But it looks like we're just doing lashers and trees here.
I don't see any of them yet.
Bone Buds
I
has
don't
a
think they're
Crystal
going to be
Fury.
pulling any of those. They have one. Okay, they did get the first ones in. This is nasty.
Yeah.
Notably, neither team popping the Bloodlust here, just using the cooldowns to live through this. It is tyrannical, and even on some of these bigger pulls on Fortified on the higher key level.
이거 에코 풀링이에요, 에코 풀링.
Like your echoes.
이 썬더 에코 풀링이에요.
Just because the boss takes so long, it would make sense to just go ahead and extrapolate out the tyrannical too. So yeah, not using the Bloodlust.
위에서 아마 나무 한 마리 추가로 내려올 거예요.
Yeah.
Dude, Thundered is
나무 셋? 4마리 됐죠?
They snapped down, didn't they?
나무 4마리? 한 마리는 지금 그 1층에서 내려온 그 1층에서 데리고 내려온 거.
Zook ends up tagging that tinder. He floats into the middle of the room and just snaps it down. So now we have this 4 tinder pull. They have a couple of lashers in it, so this makes this pull a bit more dangerous. But assuming that you have coordinated CC for the
본버즈는 지금 나무가 3마리인 것 같은데 나머지 퍼센트를 어디서 채우려고 그러지?
kicks on these tenders, maybe potentially throw a dispel in there. And I think that Thunder is going to get the better of this first area exchange, Zyro, even though they should be a little bit behind in count.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be on the boss way.
그래서 힐러가 데리고 내려오나?
Bloodlust on cooldown earlier too. Yeah, I agree. I think you're right, and I think
아, 꽃 온 거 보니까 여기도 나무 4마리겠네요. 잘 보이진 않는데. 꽃은 왔는데 나무가 왜 3마리지?
And yeah, getting that Bloodlust on cooldown earlier is really nice, and you really don't need the extra trash count from the start of this dungeon. You can get a lot of your count from different places in this dungeon. There are extra places to get it from. We know that the teams will probably end up going for that big Frogger's Bowl too, right?
붙어 있어서
When are
그런가?
we using the lust? Are we waiting for Thunder?
Wait, they didn't hit it yet.
What,
Guys?
what are we waiting on?
Maybe. Maybe the power infusion.
Could be. It could be like a CD situation, right, where they're waiting for all their cooldowns to line up. They could be waiting for Thundering. Like these MDI teams, they have very specific Thundering timings that they're waiting for as well, just to make sure that they're pushing the boss faster, making sure that they try to get lined up as consistently as they can. And Thunder has about a 20 to 30% lay more HP advantage over Bone Buds, but again, look at that count differential.
썬더드도 그래 디테일이 있네요. 자, 1층에 있는 쫄 붙여서 다 자원으로 갖다 쓰고 슬라임을 몇 마리 남겨놨어요. 뒤쪽에도 슬라임이 조금 남아있거든요. 그러니까 본버즈는 보면은 1렘 힐링 할 때 아니 본버즈도 마찬가지네. 지금 램드피 중간일 때
trash count because you can double or triple pull the trash. in
플라임을
that
추가로
area.
붙였죠.
It is very dangerous to do, but you know, like we've said already, we're on a lowish key level. We're on tyrannical, not fortified, so the bigger pulls should be able to work out. And even there is some RNG with the pulls that you can go for in the second boss room too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the trash pulls should be fairly consistent, especially whenever you're looking at like how you're practicing this dungeon. Thundered here, about to down Laymore. I kind of doubt that they're going to be pulling any of these Crystal Furies here, but I think that it is something that could be on the
플링을 잘못 봤나? 본버즈가 병력이 좀 더 높네요.
around this dungeon. It's just
썬더드도 플링이 뭔가 이상했나?
I don't want to say a lot of the times, but like a significant amount of routes on live will have you pulling.
뭐 일단 1렘이 썬더드가 먼저 끝나긴 했는데
fairly efficient, but with how MDI
본버즈가 뭔가 플링을 한 번 더 하고 왔는지 램드는 밀린 대신에 병력은 앞서고 있고 제가 봤을 때 썬더드는 지금 에코 루트하고 정확하게 동일하거든요.
You just have to make sure that you kick the waking banes of the arcane bolts to get those mobs grouped up into this pack, and it should be. This is a pull that people do on live fairly reliably, and so it should be fine for Thundered here.
Yeah, as long as you have enough AoE stops to interrupt as many of the piercing shards as possible, this pull is very, very doable. They definitely need to make sure they get all this top.
확실히 에코가 보여준 루트가 있고 어픽스가 쉽다 보니까 카피가 잘 됐네요. 미스 없이 양팀 다 지금 진행이 잘 되고 있어요.
That's such an efficient trash count pull. They got 11 count just from doing that pull that took maybe 30 seconds. I don't think there's any world where you skip that. Oh, look at the movement from Bazook too, just making sure he doesn't cost his team a little extra time taking the book, just showing off the evoker movement. Let's see how big they go in the ring here.
병력 상황이 지금 썬더드가 5% 정도 낮은데
I mean, this trash is
제가 봤을 때 그냥 뒷부분에서 그게 엄청 큰 차이가 날 것 같진 않거든요.
A lot of this trash being pulled is because anything with the arcane elementals, you're going to have a very hard time of grouping it up just because they're going to stop and start casting arcane bolt. You're not going to have enough kicks to be able to get them.
블러드는 양팀 다 1렘에서 써준 것 같고, 그러니까 지금 블러드 2분 지난 거 보니까.
Be able to get it dealt with, which I mean, Baby does have on the side of Thundered, but it's just one of those situations that. It's kind of difficult to go a bit bigger than the pull that Thunder just did right there. And now they're jumping down to the second ring. It looks like Bonebuds is doing a
네, 식물 3마리를 안 잡았어요.
Their pat was in a little bit of a different spot.
그럼 제가 봤을 때 식물 3마리 정도 같은데.
But this is effectively the exact same amount of count.
Yeah, and Thunder does need to make up that.
플링 미스인지.
Pulling 2 packs on the bottom ring here, where if I'm not mistaken, Bonebuds can just go straight to the second boss room. If they want to. So let's see what the difference is. Essentially, they're neck and neck right now. When this trash pack dies, both of them will be able to move on to the second room, which is, you know, honestly, this is pretty close.
All right, looks like both Bonebuds and Thunder are going to be downing this trash pack again.
양 팀이 기량이 진짜 거의 비슷한데 본버즈가 살짝 따라가고 있거든요. 썬더드는 제가 보니까 위에서 조금 더 붙여 잡은 것 같죠? 지금 또 병력 상황이 바뀌었어요.
So I think the difference for Bonebuds can be from pulling a couple of arcane guards in the back. I don't think Thunder has to pull one of them. Let's see what the difference is. Massive pull coming out here.
지금 네임드한테 위안이 들어가 있어요. 풀링할 때 약간 편하게 하려고. 타자 유저분들은 저거 참고하시면 좋겠네요. 보통 이넨방 풀링할 때 탱커가 무빙하다가 실수로 램드 애드하는 경우가 간혹 있거든요. 어느 위치를 뭐 한두 마리 정도 더 잡냐 그 정도 차이니까. 썬더드 저거 달고 있어 램드 들어가겠죠? 어그를 너무 많이 잡고 들어가려고 하는 것 같은데 램드 따로 가나? 얼마 안 돼서 따로 잡는 게 의미가 없는데. 이거 썬더드가 네임드 풀링 너무 재가지고 본버즈가 좀 더 빨라졌거든요.
Thundered pulled Azure Blade on top of the trash pack as the trash pack was nearing half HP. So Thundered really wants to finish off this.
본버즈가 사이페 진입이 더 빠르죠. 썬더드가 1패에서 피를 좀 더 빼기는 했는데. 저 정도로 페이지 한 번 덜 볼 수 있나?
than what Thunder did to deal with that trash pack before what could be a second intermission. Let's actually see how close they'll get here, though. Thunder did get a
어차피
lot
사이페 한 번 더
of
보면은 뭐 그렇게 큰 차이 난다고 볼 수가 없어서.
That is actually quite low. Thunder might actually be able to skip a second intermission. I don't think Bonebuds is going to be able to even come close to having a chance.
자, 지금 보면 용일이 정지장 돌려놨죠. 이게 하늘빛 이넴 사이페는 뭐 사이페 딜에 따라서 살짝 간격이 다르긴 하지만 매 사이페 간격이 거의 1분 30초라서 매번 정지장을 저렇게 쓸 수 있거든요. 그래서 생존기 로테를 정지장 무조건 끼워넣고 용비늘에 소생 쓰고 한 번은 교감, 한 번은 되돌리기 요 정도로 쓰면은 두 번 다 두 패턴 다 거의 비슷하게 막을 수 있어요.
They don't. I don't think they have anything. I was going to think they could root it, but that's not going to stop them from casting. I guess can you hibernate them? Does that work?
The dragon can.
램드는 사이페에 쫄 한 마리 더 붙여잡는 본버즈 쪽이 조금 더 디테일이 좋기는 하네요. 썬더도 혹시 이거 사이페 한 번도 안 보고 정리가 되나요? 아, 이 차이가 나네. 썬더드가 그러니까 램드 풀링하기 전에 좀 쟀던 게 쿨기나 이런 걸 좀 기다렸던 것 같아요. 이렇게 되면은 쿨기 기다리는 게 훨씬 더 이득이죠.
I think something also that was super smart that that's like very difficult to notice is Thunder pulled Azure Blade with Grief Torch.
그러니까 뭐 타이페 저렇게 본버즈 쪽 쫄 붙여잡는 저런 디테일은 본버즈 쪽이 나쁘지 않았는데 그냥 쿨기 기다려서 깔끔하게 사이페 한 번 보고 끝내는 게 썬더스 쪽이 훨씬 더 좋네요. 아무리 그래도 폭군 21단인데 타이페 한 번 보고 마무리하는 게 저런 딜이 나오네요. 나오기는. 용가리 한 마리? 두 마리? 이거는 왜 깨워놓는 거지? 아, 여기서 싸우겠다. 용가리 두 마리죠?
Yeah, I mean it's a one-time thing. It's just surprised that he's hitting
now
them.
they have the entire room to run around it. I think it's fine.
Oh my gosh.
As long as that's the play that they're all aware of.
몹 진짜 깔끔하게 보였다.
Didn't die? Yo, evoke remains, take note.
Thunder is doing a great job here. This typically whenever you're doing pulls like this, you don't want to be pulling double breaker, or even like triple breaker because of how much damage they're going to be doing from their roar plus the shoulder slam combo. It puts you in a position where you can potentially die. But Thunder do a great job of getting this trash pack grouped up and killed off fast. They drop like Ursul's Vortex to try to keep the pack stacked up for their 2 melee DPS to be able to do as much damage as possible. And now they are on to Taylash Greywing. You see they're at 100% enemy forces. I think this is going to be it's just a Mind Soothe and walk around angle, and then Taylash Greywing, and
그쵸.
just have two bosses left to deal with, and
이 조합에서 발이 제일 느린 게
one barring any deaths here, Zyra.
근데 죽기도 발이 좀 느리긴 한데
To be honest, both teams have looked great. Just the execution on that second.
아무래도 캐스터가 자리를 먼저 잡아야 되니까 구출 같은 건 사제를 좀 신경 써주는 게 낫죠. 아, 근데 구출이 앞에서 빠진 건 조금 아쉽다. 이게 에코 같은 경우는 그 3렘 잡을 때 첫 얼음 폭탄이 터지고 나서 그때 사제를 구출로 바로 빼줬거든요. 딜로스 없이. 요번에 써주나? 아니네, 그냥 비슷한 라인으로 가네. 보면은 사제는 거의 무빙 안 하고 맨 뒤쪽에서 포지션을 잡고 딜을 하다가 용일이 구출이 있을 때마다 옮겨주는 식으로 했었거든요. 에코에서는. 그런 것까지는 제대로 안 봤나 보네.
To win this weekend over them, they were like, "Oh yeah, we are going to be able to overcome that, and we believe that we have the chance of winning this whole entire weekend." And I mean, their Azure Vault has looked pretty much perfect. Like there's no complaints here for me on this Azure Vault. It's looked great.
그냥 보니까 썬더드나 본버즈나 체급은 비슷한데 루트가 썬더드 쪽이 조금 더 좋았다? 이뎀에서 쿨기를 기다렸던 설계? 딱 그거 하나 차이로 갈린 것 같네요 보니까. 나머지는 거의 비슷했는데.
1845 it was a 23 fortified. It was 23 fortified.
Okay, 18. All right. Yeah, so key level. If this was somewhere in the realm of like
쏨쏨 이충전이 무슨 말이에요?
16, that's about right where I would expect Echo to be. So this is a great run from them so far. I mean, they've got the Bloodlust coming up for the last boss too, so that boss should go down incredibly fast. Also, we haven't really even mentioned it.
아 2차징에서 쓴다고요?
Did actually nerf Umbral Skull, so that boss is significantly easier now and should go down faster because of it.
그러니까 뭐 그런 계산이 있겠죠? 2단 차징을 해서 쓰면은
Now you have Tail-Ash Grey Wing going down. Now
그 다음 뭐 폭탄 전에 만피가 된다 뭐 그런 계산?
It should die relatively fast. They're able to save
어?
a bit of time with players jumping down.
전택 영도 삑살이 났지.
His heroic leap dies. And
얄 같네.
I was about to make a positive comment on how much time they've saved by jumping down and gripping baby and stuff like that. But instead they lose it to the death, which, not great.
Hey, it happens.
But it's
We've seen
fine.
it before. Sometimes you miss your lead.
쏨쏨은 어차피 들어가는 도트 일량은 동일하기 때문에 그러니까 그 픽당 도트 일량이 동일하기 때문에 뭐 2단을 쓰든 1단을 쓰든 3단을 쓰든 지금 파티원 피가 어느 정도 빠졌냐에 따라서 상황에 맞게 쓰는 게 좋아요. 피가 깔짝 빠졌는데 그 상황에서 뭐 굳이 풀차징이나 2단, 3단 이렇게 쓸 필요가 없잖아요. 어차피 남는 그 도트일에서 그 틱당 힐량은 똑같은데 의미가 크게 없죠.
This week as well. They made these orbs. So they changed the interaction on the boss, but it's effectively a nerf. They made the orbs
이왕이면 지속 시간이 긴 게 낫지.
which is it's an absolutely phenomenal change. It makes the fight significantly easier, and now you just move the boss, and if as long as you're not tanking the boss on top of the orbs like Thunder is doing, it makes the boss significantly easier.
Those were the nerfs I was talking about before they jumped down. Yeah. Yeah, there was that. We didn't even talk about the class buffs this week too. Although I guess it makes sense because we're probably still not going to see those classes that got buffed because they were pretty out of the meta anyways.
이거는 진짜
There were a
이넴
number of changes. But Umbral Skull going down very quickly.
이넴에서 관련해 이넴에서.
Thundered here.
Bonebud's are keeping it close.
They actually are keeping it pretty close, but still 30%.
제가 봤을 때 본버즈는
That is a lot of difference to chew through. The death timers are equal.
이넴에서 그 타입에 한 번 보고 넘긴다는 그 계산을 아예 안 해본 것 같아요.
Yeah, I think that for Bonebuds, they were just the count.
이 썬더드가 하는 걸 봤으니까 이제 본버즈도 다음 경기 때는 아마 그 계산을 하겠죠?
Biggest thing, like you pointed out whenever we were watching, is just like that Azure Blade being able to two-phase that seemed like the absolute biggest difference between the two. As Thunder do down the final detonating shards, they're going to be able to kill off Umbral Skull and take map 1 here in just a couple of seconds.
Yeah, and like right
그러니까
around
네임드 딜도 그렇고 양 팀이 거의 비슷한데.
a bit slower than actually I assumed earlier on, but still a very clean run from Thunder. Good execution. Moving on to our second map of the series with a 1-0 lead for Thunder.
Yeah, absolutely right. Thunder
이거는 진짜 썬더드가 준비를 조금 더 해서 준비한 만큼 이겼다.
And especially talent choices in what we saw play out, because overall the teams were very similar. We saw the same talent choices on nearly all of the players except for the two DKs. Hemo was actually running that gargoyle build titles that we saw last week from Swag as well.
뭔가 예습 복습의 승리.
Which means that they should have a little bit more single target priority. And that didn't really
에코 경기
translate
복습
for them.
잘하고
So we're gonna have a look at
오늘 할 경기
in
예습
just a few
잘했다.
seconds, but I think that's the biggest point that this series came down to. At the very beginning,
이런 게 약간 그런 거거든요. 그러니까 택틱을 카피를 하면서도 응용을 해야 돼요. 그러니까 썬더드는 응용을 한 거지. 이뎀에서 사이페를 한번 보면은 우리가 시간을 더 줄일 수 있겠다.
making sure that they're killing off the tenders that spawn the boss first, after and then the fourth one afterwards with the boss together. I thought that was really nice, like saving a few seconds there on both sides. But there was already the first time
본
where
버전은 그냥
Thunder
카피만
took the lead.
했다.
They killed Laymore first, even though they should have technically had a little bit worse single target in the overall. So taking the lead there. Then Bazook, actually, interestingly enough, holding on to a suppressive roar in the previous pull, saving it for this one, making sure they definitely have it, even though I think he maybe could have gotten away with using it on both pulls, because it does CD reduce for every enraged it dispels.
뭐 쫄 한두 마리 정도
You
다르게
can see it
잡는 뭐
coming here
디테일은
towards the
달랐지만
end, I think. And then on
전체적인
Bazook
틀은 뭐
lane,
어차피
he said
양팀
as
다
well, I
에코
think. They were able
택틱이었으니까.
to one-face the boss. It was a little bit close, but it still has that moment where it starts casting, you know, so they had like, I think like 3 more seconds maybe to finish the boss off. Whereas Bonebots needing to play that second phase on the Zerblade, that just cost them so much more time. Really, really, here, you can see it, they eked it out. And then, yeah, leap of faith, path not available. It's not leap of faith, heroic leap. Path not available, you know.
전탱이 낙사하면 안 되지.
Definitely a very, very nice and clean 1-0 for Thundered. And I'm curious, I'd really like to see the logs and see how their pure boss DPS look like. Because in my mind, it's not making sense, but I'll try to get to the bottom of this.
Oh yeah, just boss DPS between the two teams is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that both Thunder and
1분.
Bonebuds, it comes down to that Azure Blade. I mean, there's a minute that separates between the two teams. Maybe if
이름 사이클보다
they'd probably save
조금 더
something
차이가 나긴 했네요.
35 to 45 seconds off of their timer, and so it would have been, you know, a 10-second affair as opposed to a near 1 minute affair between the two. And so overall, though, I think it's pretty good. We got to look towards Ruby life pools between the two next team, these two teams as well next, which should be a lot more challenging, I think.
Yeah, that Ruby life pulse, we saw it in the previous series. Zyra, you already had a little bit of taste with that Disc Priest and the Mage. I know you're not a huge fan. Are you open to it coming back, maybe?
I wouldn't say I'm not a huge fan. I was just a little surprised that, you know, someone actually played it, because every single time in the past where we're like, yeah, this seems pretty good here, the teams just opted not to play it. Monka seems to not care, though, and they're kind of the team that we got that information from earlier on. We're like, yeah, Fire Mage can be...
전에 누가 얘기했던 것 같은데 치즈가 메소드 팀이라 그랬었나?
And that was why we kind of assumed we wouldn't see them as much.
치즈에 뭐 누가 그랬던 것 같은데? 메소드였나 에코였나 애들이 조금 있다고.
So interestingly enough, Thunder did play a mage in their time trials, but they didn't run it together with a Disc Priest. So I'm kind of looking for masking if whether or not that's going to be an option, if they maybe prep the priest to do that, because we saw the previous groups do it before. We also saw a Warlock come out in Ruby Life Pulse before. So this dungeon for me is always the surprise one, Tettles. Any class you'd like the teams to bring?
I actually think that the Mage makes a lot of sense in Ruby Life Pools, specifically for a couple of... With like bolstering, specifically, what the Mage provides is like they provide like a lot of single target priority damage. So more often than not, we'll talk about funnel and how valuable funnel is in like MDI situations, especially this season with some of the specs that we see. But the thing that the Mage does best is like prio damage with Ignite. And there are a lot of pulls such as, you know, Draghar, that mini boss. He's a great target to just kind of focus down if you have him inside of a pull. The Primal Juggernauts at the very beginning. Any pull with a Destroyer, also good to just like eat your full combustion and have that Ignite spread to it. And so I think that like Ruby Life Pools is one of the best dungeons to be able to utilize that Mage Ignite. I think it makes sense in this dungeon. Maybe Zyra is the person who's played the most fire.
루비 같은 경우는 씨 합업의 수사를 봐가지고
Yeah, the bolstering definitely does make it more of a
뭔가 다른 게 없을 것 같긴 한데.
real pick, right? Because you do want to make sure the destroyer either dies first or dies at the same time as everything else. Because if a multiple bolstered Inferno cast gets off on the group,
딜이라든지 택틱이라든지 미세하게 지금 썬더드가 좀 앞서거든요.
just kill you with any other residual damage going out. So it makes a little bit of sense. And I do want to say, I mentioned it earlier, Fire Mage actually does have a little bit of funnel.
그래도 조금만 참으시면은 그래도 예선 5위 팀의 경기를 볼 수 있으니까.
I'm sorry that I'm laughing, but I just can't hear the word funnel anymore without having a little bit
Okay,
of a
so
laughing.
if you
사실
go
이번 경기는 저도 별로 기대가 안 돼요.
companion tab,
뭐 그냥 실수 안 하는 팀이 이기겠지.
tab and look at the Fire Mage talent tree. Okay, actually, they're not playing a Fire Mage, so you can't see it. If you look at a Fire Mage talent tree, at the top right of the talent tree, there's a talent called Fervent
근데 진짜
Flickery.
디스미스드가
Fire Blast
지난
Turtles.
시즌엔 예선
It's
10위였어가지고
good. Trust. It's real
혹시나 좀
fun.
잘하나? 뭐 그런 걸
Alright,
기대했는데
before we enter that Ruby Life Pulse, I do want to
예선 결과가
who's actually streaming right
본선 때
now,
거의
and
그대로 가는
obviously
느낌이라서
twitch.tv/hemoglobintv, all one word. So if you want to check that out, want to see some DK prior action, you can get on that. Of course, we encourage all players to stream their POVs here, but no Fire Mage apparently, Zaro, as we go into that Ruby Life Pulse, I think you're going to be surprised.
화법? 여기도 화법 써서? 아 이게 검증이 된 조합인가요?
I actually think that the Fire Mage in the
설마
race
이거를
makes sense.
전 경기 보고 바로 카피를 했을 것 같진 않거든요.
Is going to be focusing more on that priority damage. They're going to be pressing eviscerate a lot on these big.
특히
mobs.
수사는 연습이 안 돼 있으면 힘들기
Probably the
때문에
most dangerous pull of this whole entire dungeon, right? We're like for the Fire Mage, they're going to be single target combusting this Juggernaut. Their Ignite's going to be cleaving off on all these other mobs.
다태야.
But
탱커 다태야.
Rogue, I mean, I'm actually surprised.
내가 극혐하는 탱커 다태야.
A bit concerning on my end because if Thunder is able to get this pull dealt with and do it clean, I think that they should be in an absolutely phenomenal spot. They have that Juggernaut in this.
여기도 큰 놈이 먼저 죽죠.
Kind of run straight through and pull the boss as the second pull of the dungeon. For Bone Buds, I think that they're going to have to do.
근데 여기는 마주를 부족이 받은 것 같죠?
boss pull.
야드가 1등?
Just the ease of damage coming out from Thunder. All three classes peaking over 700k. All the bolstering stats.
탱커 드리블 역주행.
Alex needs to get out of there and not get touched by a single one of these mobs. Different kiting strategy than what we saw from Monk.
탱커 지금 약간 해줘.
Just absolute
해줘.
disaster for Bone Buds. They're not able to deal with the bolstering stacked Heddles. You wanted them to go bigger. I don't think they knew how to go bigger, man. That was
본버즈
unfortunate scenario.
지금 투물이 없어요. 잡아야 돼. 벨트?
Six deaths. They also don't have shroud to get past.
본버즈 시작부터 망했네. 도비터? 도적이 있네요. 다행이다.
Okay, so they do have shroud.
Yeah.
썬더드?
Well, they're gonna have to deal with the remnants of that pole, which is not exactly efficient. They might pull extra trash.
썬더드 속도 차이는 있지만
Still there.
에코랑 그래도 동일하게 가네요.
To the first boss here, pulling the mini boss with it.
에코가 아니고 몽카랑 동일하게 가네요. 화법? 썬더리.
Two players dead.
썬더리. 본버즈 가능성 있다.
Are they just gonna do it with the DPS?
근데 이게 전부 하나라서 그래 전멸은 안 했네요. 이거 전멸 없이 막았네.
Just reset
Wiping
it.
here is also bad. I don't even know what you're supposed to do in this situation. Are you supposed to reset the boss?
이거 폭군인데
Right, because it's already doors already.
이거 폭군인데 딜러 한 명 없이 가는 거
Yeah, that's what they'd have to do. They would have had to made the call. Every second they don't make that call is just more and more time lost. Getting through this intermission phase without a DPS is going to be very, very dangerous. Notably because Feral might actually try to do as much.
그 와중에 죽는 건 야드.
The Unholy Fire Mage comp. I know that people like to meme on Feral funnel, but when they choose to actually
이게
funnel damage, look at how long this Frost Shield is taking them. Bazook is
사이페를 좀 길게 봐야 돼요.
alive right now. They do get
일단 첫 사이페 넘겼고 사이페만 넘기면 그 다음부터는 괜찮은데
because now they have to do the actual mechanics of the fight for even longer here, and this is just going to just peter out. And the thing that's rough about this two Tuttles is that with the DPS down, this boss
썬더도 지금 쉽지 않아요.
he is not really that healthy either, right? He doesn't have the innervate
지금
either,
죽기 이속기 안 좋, 그러니까 이동기 안 좋으니까 사제가 도약으로 좀 땡겨주는.
potentially could be. I mean, if I was
용일도 비슷하게 1렘에서는 구출 활용하면 되게 좋아요. 터지자마자. 근데 저는 루비에서는 그 쌍둥이 소호자? 보막 특성까지 찍거든요.
No combust for that second shield means you are going to die to it, almost certainly.
Alex is
Oh,
an
no, they're
absolute
pushing.
beast. Being able to tank drag far and the boss for this long? What in the world am I witnessing?
All right, well,
아까도 말씀드렸지만 모하드가 잘하긴 해.
Or just the boss by themselves? Alex able to keep
그러니까 방금 야드가 죽은 거는 뭐 야드 잘못은 아니었지만
Eldris is in this phase. We got a boon.
그 와중에 탱커 다 떼야.
An
Got Ultra
elemental.
Time. They've got the Combust back up. The shield's already eaten through.
탱커
so
다
very,
떼야.
very good.
바닥 안 깔렸네 다행히.
Look at the mana for Berserk now, down below 15%. He is on fumes. That mini boss needs to die. They need to reduce the pressure on their group now so that they can just stay alive and finish the boss off.
이게 썬더드가 혹시나 전멸을 했으면은
They're already past the pool, just about to get through that first
따라잡혔을 수도
Man,
있는데
this is
아직은 그래도 썬더드가
so much time. I
많이
think that
앞서가네요.
would've been faster for them to just reset it and go again. But they
Lust
committed.
just faded for Bone Buds. Now they're on the boss.
Oh, they
Ooh, they're just
saved
letting
it,
the Frost
and-
Overload go.
Yeah, that's the typical strategy. It lets you.
어, 사제? 사제?
Don't have to worry about
사제?
the chill storms.
어.
It's very nice to deal
Yeah.
with. Thunder didn't have that option because they just had to. They had to help their healer as much as possible.
Look at his mana; it's so low. I mean, he should. be
사제가
fine,
만화가 그래도 아직은 여유가 있어서
But I mean, I think that Bone Buds are going to kill this boss somewhere in the order of maybe 30 seconds behind where Thundered are. Now there is a significant death advantage on the side of Thundered, right? One of the things that
Yeah.
not wiping does for them is it saves them 4 additional deaths. But this is a situation too where both of these teams don't have a battle res.
이 정도 차이면은 썬더드가 혹시나
It could be
큰 실수 한 번 더 나오면 따라잡힐 수 있거든요.
one or the other team's favor. Now, Thunder about to down Meladrusa, and I'm really interested to see what they're going to do in this ring trash. Wiping like this messes with your flow for a lot of different variables as well. It messes with.
혹시 바라도 안 쓴 지 오래됐나요?
It also messes with your thundering timing, and those two are the biggest ones.
풀기를
So,
전부 다 킵한 느낌이에요 지금 막판에.
We planned out this pull around, having combust plus thundering. Now we're not going to have those things. Is that going to be something that stunts their pulls?
썬더드가 지금 약간 무리할 필요는 없어서
Or are they going to just kind of try to do the same?
혹시 화염 파괴자 2마리 동시에 간다면은
I would imagine they'd do the same thing.
몽카가 했으면 우리도 할 수 있다 약간 그런 느낌인 것 같거든요.
Raskin committed his second lust for himself on that
Okay.
first boss. He
썬더드
kept it
이번
up for this
풀링.
pull now. He normally wouldn't have it up, I would imagine, if they didn't have any mistakes. So that would honestly, I think that would make this pull that much better.
아까 몽카 탱커는 실패했던.
Skipping past Thunderhead here. Let's see though. Are they pulling the second destroyer in? Yes, they
Oh my God,
are.
Bone
Off
Buds.
to the races here. Double destroyer pull, but Bone
야,
Buds.
몽카가 했으면 우리도
Versus the
한다.
boss here. Oh no, you cannot off tank this boss. This is going to be a full wipe for Bone
본버즈
Buds.
전멸이요.
4%. That is the absolute worst possible scenario. Oh no, and any chance they had of coming back, I feel like it's just evaporated. Oh
a
my
tank
god,
death.
that is
일렘 컷.
rough.
All right, now Thundered here. Looked like they did skip Thunderhead, and they're going to be doing this double destroyer pull.
썬더드도 피 잘 맞춰주면서.
But they're stuck in the beginning.
What do
man.
they do?
This is so sad.
do they
I mean,
have
they're
Shroud
mass
again?
resing.
Oh, that,
잠깐 탱커.
oh man.
I hate to see that. That's so unfortunate.
Yeah, it was just a frigid shard. Took their tank down from 60 to 0. And Chazazard.
dude,
썬더드 방금 탱커 피 빠졌던 게 저 불꽃찌기인가? 불꽃찌기가 죽으면은 그 보막 생기면서 빙글빙글 돌잖아요. 그러면서 바닥에 깔리는데 그때 그 불꽃찌기 옆에 있으면 데미지가 엄청 크게 들어와요. 마무리가 되면은 그 쫄 주변에서 바로 빠져줘야 되거든요. 저거로 실수로 죽는 경우 많이 나와요. 뭐 딜러고 탱커고 원딜들은 잘 모를 수 있어요. 특히 몹 이름 불꽃찌기 맞나? 아무튼 죽기 전에 보막 생기면서 그 소용돌이 같은 거 막 치는 애 바닥 깔리면서
You wouldn't do this in
걔가 죽을 때는 항상 춤추는 애
practiced of groups could even consider doing that in like a
춤꾼인가? 아무튼 걔 죽을 때 무용가
So it's very
불꽃 무용가 맞아.
here. Thundered,
불꽃 무용가 죽을 때는 주변에서 빠져 있어야 돼요.
making sure they don't accidentally
붙어 있으면 죽어요 그냥. 거의 원빵 나는 느낌으로 죽어요.
Observer POV in the background there. I'd like to see it. What is the plan? They've mind-sued the
네.
Shardcaster and are taking this
바닥딜만 있는 게 아니고
around the left side of the tree there. Most people don't know about that because they don't want to accidentally pull the Shotcaster.
방금 그 불꽃 무용가의 탱커 죽을 뻔했어요 썬더드.
Go patrol into the final destroyer here. This is a very high damage pull, but they've got the Nature's Vigil. They should be safe.
Yeah, I mean,
Blessed.
the the biggest thing that you have to watch out for is that destroyer HP. You don't want to bolster him. So typically in poll, like in this poll in general, the destroyer is
네, 맞아요.
like
죽을 때
last
바로 칼대야 돼요.
alive. But with how Thundered have allocated their damage, look at this. Maskins and Combust. You have Subcris also just absolutely.
그러니까 근딜들은 약간
just to make sure that
뭐 몇 번 죽어봐서
anything else. And, ooh,
근딜이나 탱커는 보통 죽어봐서 이제 경험으로 대충 아는데 원딜 힐러들이
That's something that's
한 번씩 죽을 때가 있을 거예요.
not commonly pointed out.
이게 보통 죽어도 아 이거 왜 죽었지 하면서 그냥 넘어가는 경우가 좀 있거든요.
It's on a knife's edge fairly often because you
지금
miss
나오죠?
any of the score
저 블레이즈 오브 저 스킬 쓸 때 주변에 있으면 안 돼요.
not playing the dragons at all. And so
Right.
you have to make sure that you get every single one of those, and if you miss one, then you're in deep trouble. And now Thundered have started on the second boss. This is a boss that we've seen cause some teams some issues, right, Zyro? We've seen some tank deaths on this fight.
We've seen some tank deaths. We've seen some
썬더드 지금 램드를 풀링하고 우측으로 좀 더 안으로 들어왔죠. 저건 이제
He is
그
very
라자겟을 안 잡았기 때문에
with the damage that's
공간을
coming
좀
plus the off healing, they should
활용하기 위한
I would guess. Listen,
I mean,
if he can heal 50% of a boss with a DPS dead in this much,
지금 수사가 만화가 별로 없는데
that much mana too. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say it. What do you
Okay.
think?
These
그쵸. 저단에서
damage intake on this fight is actually the
저단에서 뭐 맞아도 안 죽으니까.
firestorms. So every single time it casts Inferno, just watch the group as they dip incredibly low. They'll typically
만화가 없는데 저거는 그냥 광위에 그냥 속죄일로 딱 커버가 되나 봐요. 그래서 탐 없이 바로 들어갔죠.
Also have Alex getting searing blowed by the boss at the same time, and so you see like a PS was used there to make sure that Alex had enough defensive coverage. And since they're not running like a preservation evoker, they're not able to like cauterize that or any of that. So you just have to be super cautious if you're Alex on the side of Thundering.
Yeah, exactly. Doing well. Yeah, Bazook's mana has actually gone up, by the way, over the course
Alright,
of
he's
this
dying.
fight. So looks like they're doing just fine on that. Really only has to commit the healing, like you mentioned, during the Inferno dot. As long as you
Oh
don't
my
the
God.
places and keep the tank up, you're totally fine. It is a lot of damage, but it's only over a very short window. And as long as they beat the second Inferno cast, they will be totally fine.
그러니까 저도
Got the power infusion.
지난주에 얘기했었는데 아 옴니시드 이거 지금 트래킹 해놓은 게 마음에 안 들어요. 한 줄 더 트래킹 해주면 좋겠는데.
Oh, you don't want that. Oh, the last tick almost taking them out. They definitely need to kill a second out a little bit faster. You know, I wonder if there is a little bit of like a weird missed timings of CDs because of the delay on the first boss, right? Because
지금 바닥 굉장히 촘촘하게 쓰고 있는데 램드피 생각보다 많이 남았거든요.
don't, but then you don't have it for the pull you normally have it for, and that takes a little longer, and then cooldowns are misaligned for everything else. It's a very weird domino effect, but that
이거
really weird
조금 빡세 보이는데? 한 칸 더 되나?
In a really
as long as they get
tough spot here for Thunder.
이거 이번에 분류도 진짜 잘해야 돼요. 분류도 잘해야 돼. 안 그러면 공간 없어진다.
They can like one more, this plus one more ad that they can summon before they kind of run out of space. That boulder.
한 칸 더 나오네. 공간 한 칸 더 나오네.
Cause them any issues? Oh my gosh, dude! Alex is dropping so low here from the searing blows, but everybody's able to get topped up here.
they're burning boss.
I think
They're good. Yeah, this
they're
is a good
fine.
call.
Okay, we're good.
이게 공간이 이 정도면은 혹시나
Taking damage will go off, but they should be
루비
able to
24단
burn
폭군이
off.
나오면은
On fumes here, trying
아,
to finish the
죽었다.
team off. Their feral druid does go down at the last
예,
second.
계속 얘기하는데 또 죽는 건 야.
Take it. That is a last second death. They can get a quick res off. Let everybody
So-
eat up, heal up to full.
낙겁도 있는데.
Inferno
나
cap is
컵도
actually
있는데.
dictated by ad lockout, right? And so you want to go like a short lockout into like
이게 약간 힐러 감성인데
utilizing that mage to
누가 죽으면 일단 생존기 썼나부터 보거든요.
lockout, so where they in a perfect world wouldn't get
낙겁 있네. 이거 생본 아닌가?
Now they're trying to balance boss damage into that kick rotation as well, and just try to make sure that
좀 그래요. 저런 거 볼 때마다.
because overcommitting on the ad isn't great.
이거 막 죽기는 어리서서 살았잖아.
Infernos,
어?
which is not ideal, but now Thunder are in a position where
죽기는 어리서서
out
살았잖아.
the into this dungeon well. They should be in a great spot.
그러니까 야드 생존기가 조드랑 비슷한 거죠.
Mind soothes as we're waiting for the pull to be set up properly.
그러니까 드루이드가 보면은
Should be good.
그러니까 숙련도에 따라서 그 생존하는 게 차이가 되게 많이
Far
나더라고요.
behind from this point. I think that the
그러니까 초보 드루 딜러랑
situation where I don't
고수가 하는 드루 딜러랑
Yeah,
생존기 돌리는 게 확실히 달라요.
like they are. I mean, it makes sense.
사제 죽었다.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
이거 짤 샜어요. 짤
Went
샜어.
onto Bazook there.
전부.
Didn't get it off.
전부 빨리 해.
Very weird. They've got the battle res. That was awkward, but it was fortunately it was
Cursing them.
after the lightning storm, so it didn't cause a wipe. That was very weird. Huh.
야드가 힐량이 훨씬 더 좋아요. 그러니까 자경 파워가 보드에 비해서 야드가 훨씬 센가 보네요.
It makes sense to pull this slower, right? Normally,
아,
you'd see
공짜
people
재생이
for a
있어.
couple of weeks just, pull this all on top of high channel or Rivati here and just go after the.
Yeah.
아, 그러니까 쿨기 때 자경 당연히 조드가 셀 텐데
very efficiently.
약간 에버리지잖아요.
Even with
그러니까 뭐
a single
제가 아까도 자경 얘기했지만 이게 자경이 그냥 쿨기 때 킨다고 좋은 게 아니고
And you really don't want
힐이 필요할 때 자경을 켜주는 건데
mechanical, this thing hits like a truck. Not to mention the thunderclap debuffs going out on the group 2. It's just so much healing to deal with.
What are these knocks that they're doing?
I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to not
You saw-
bolster as much as possible. That has to
You saw
be
them,
what it
right?
is.
여기까지 최현빈님의 야드 어필이었고요.
Yeah,
근데 진짜 MDI에서 계속 보면 야드가 좋아 보여서 고단에서도 괜찮을 것 같다는 생각을 많이 하거든요.
It might be a situation that you like you exactly said where it's just they don't want
보면은 단일도 그렇게 안 약한 것
the
같고
warriors completely underneath the high channeler the whole entire time because the high channeler, it'll shield itself occasionally. You don't want it to have 2 stacks of bolstering for any extended period of time. As Thunder down that pack in perfect sync.
I actually have.
You're probably right.
There's a very weird interaction that people might not know about because Mage hasn't really been in the meta for that long.
Okay.
On that high channeler Rivati mob, do not spell steal the Stormlings as they come out. The way that Storm Shield ability, whole thing works with that mob,
근데 야드 포지션이
the boss will spawn
근딜에서 전부라서
shields on them.
Yeah.
근딜이 전부를 한다? 이거 좀
Put
귀하거든요.
a shield on itself. If you spell steal those shields as a mage,
몽카는
spell steal full shields and the
다시 보기로
boss will
돌려보시는 걸
shields from you.
유튜브 가시면 돌려볼 수 있거든요.
So do not spell steal them. You are
진기는 진짜 패치되면 어떻게 될지 좀 궁금하긴 해요.
Don't spell steal.
그러니까 진기뿐만이 아니라 지금 기사가 다 전체적으로 바뀌는 거니까.
Learn that one the hard way.
몽카 뭐
All right. Now,
여지없이 압도적인 경기.
I think that this is fairly standard. It's really annoying.
근데 던전들이 약간 시시했어가지고 내일 뭐 또 보시면 되죠.
Right here. But assuming that you've like practiced this a lot, right? Like Alex is tanking the warriors in a very specific spot. Sub Chris has extended range.
고술 역할은 못하죠. 고술 역할은 블러드가 있으니까. 근데 뭐
Maybe the only one that's, like,
요새 뭐 힐러가 다 용일이라서
cheat
블러드는 크게 중요하지
is, like,
않으니까.
Probably the most durable, like non-cheat death class in the game. So maybe even if he does.
고술이 광역 스턴이 광역 스턴이 3개거든요. 세븐까지. 그러니까 사람들이 고술 다 축전 천폭만 알고 있는데 세븐이라고 행불이 하나 더 있잖아요. 그것도 되게 커요 생각보다.
Yeah, absolutely. And with our card going down to 50% here, we should see the bloodlust.
세븐도 타겟 제한 없는 스킬이고 그러니까.
Get a little bit of free chip damage before the intermission phase. If you bloodlust right here. Yeah, this
그리고
is
일단
bloodlust
짤이
now in the second
아
phase.
근데 술사 짤은 정말 메리트가 좀 크긴 해.
Where it does its flame breath, stays down for a little bit longer.
야드도
In position for phase 2. And check that out.
유틸이 워낙 좋은
40%
편인데
at the start.
고술도 유틸이 진짜 좋아요. 맞아.
Perfect execution. They're only going to get one set of flame spits. They actually almost
약간 우열을 가리기 힘들어요. 야드하고 고술의 유틸은. 둘다 너무 좋다. 그냥 어픽스에 따라서 뭐 키움 같은 거 있을 때는 태풍이 훨씬 좋고 우르솔도 그렇고.
Not trying to jinx them, I promise.
There's no way that they can wipe from here.
결국은 뭐 딜이 누가 더 센지.
It just came down to the first pull, first boss.
보이는 자경이 있어서 생존기는 야드가 훨씬 더 좋아요.
The wipe on the first boss, they weren't really able
야드가 생존기가 조금 더 좋은 게 아니고 훨씬 더 좋아요.
recover, show back up tomorrow after this and then Thunder. I mean, they just got to be a little bit more consistent, but they look good.
저는 그냥 야드 대 고술은 그냥 딜 센 놈이 이기는 걸로.
Series here in our second series of the day. We'll be moving on in that upper bracket, and I think
고술도
look at our predictions in a little bit.
그러니까 생존기 잘 돌리는 고술들은 뭐 늑정 변신 쓰고
If I'm not mistaken, I know I did. What about you?
뭐 그런 여러 가지가 있지만
I had
No?
Thunderstruck as mine.
I also
Okay,
have
that's
Thunderstruck as
close.
my wild card.
근데 뭐 이렇게 얘기해도 그냥 딜센 놈이
Alright,
최고예요.
well,
딜센 놈이.
We're just all
Thunder
gonna, yeah, just all gonna agree on Thunder being something that's really good if you're a
No,
wild card team. But as we go into our replay here, something that I thought was really cool coming out of Thunder, if you're looking at that Juggernaut HP, they're making sure
Yeah.
that they're absolutely prioritizing it in order not
아우,
to
화법.
mess it up, because that's the worst thing that
화법
could happen.
불작 캐스팅 계속 끊는 건
And
조금.
here, really unfortunate. They tried to clear the thundering, but somebody was
어,
maybe
천둥.
not
근데
there
이거 천둥
early,
복구 되게
and then
잘했네요.
thundering couldn't be cleared, and they picked up a Zook. which
법사라서
I think
살았네,
in this mode,
법사라서.
You either decide to go again, or you decide to foreman it. And Thunder deciding to foreman it definitely is not unprecedented in MDI history. But it does
그니까요.
make for a very long boss fight. On the other side, Bonebuds.
아,
having this
법사는
really unfortunate tank
이번
damage
시즌
here,
단단하진
which they
않아요.
couldn't recover
그러니까
if they
법사는
didn't
약간
have,
숙련도 있는
advanced.
법사들도 이번 시즌
Then
엄청
tried
아파요.
to off-tank it, and of course, Unholy DK is a little bit tanky.
어우,
but at some
다
point
잡고
they
죽었네.
also die, unfortunately. So they had this really, really rough wipe here at the end of Meladrusa. And
근데 이번 시즌 원탑은 흑마. 진짜 흑마가 원탑이에요, 원탑. 제일 단단해. 이 세상에서 제일 단단해. 그냥 탱커보다 단단한 것 같아. 야, 암사도 단단한 한 편인데 흑마랑 비교가 안 돼요. 네, 맞아. 흑마는 이게 왜 안 죽지? 그냥 영원히 살아있을 것 같은데? 흑마? 그러니까 어떤 느낌이냐면은 암사는 힐을 조금만 줘도 사는 느낌이고 흑마는 힐을 안 줘도 그러니까 레이드 프레임에서 빼놔도 살 것 같아. 레이드 프레임에 흑마가 없어도 걔는 영원히 살아있을 것 같아. 맞아요. 흑마는 그냥 힐을 안 감아도 되는 느낌.
Makes I have a question. What did you end up thinking about the decision to four-man that boss? Did you think that was the right call? Zyro and I were kind of talking about it a little bit. We couldn't tell what we necessarily thought was better.
Well, I think it both works, right? Either case, you're going to lose a lot of time. Either you're going to have the wipe seconds, or you're going to have just the DPS that that you're lacking from that third DPS, of course. And I think they maybe just decided that, hey, the important cooldowns from the rogue already had gone out, so maybe it's not as tragic as what they lost. Or maybe they were like, oh, you know, we really don't want to have the extra death timer against us. I don't know. In the end, it worked for them, right? That's all I'm going to say. You can see here the crazy amount of damage they did in that very first pull with the mage and DPI. I think that's always something to look out for.
뭐 한 번 더 보여드리자면은
You warming up to that pick, sir?
지금 오신 분들을 위해서
Wait, did you just?
You got him.
So when I thought Doa was gone, the dad jokes keep coming back, even though he's not here.
It comes with the host role, right?
I thought that was great. Don't let him trash you. I thought that was good.
But
Zyro's just a
of course,
downer.
that
흑마의 위대함.
I mean, we're gonna get him at some point. He'll make a stupid joke. I can't wait for it personally. But Thunder Bonebots 2-0 means we're gonna see them tomorrow in.
제가 실수로 파리 3마리가 애드가 나서 파리가 6마리거든요. 25단 경화예요.
I'm also really looking forward to other things, but before that, I do have a bad and a good message for you guys. So some good and some bad news. The bad news is that unfortunately the team Breaker
올라가는
is
흑마에
unable to compete today due to unexpected circumstances. We've been working with them.
흑마는 힐 주기도 전에 피가 차버리고
We're really hoping to see them then. But that also means that Cheese, a team that we all wanted to see.
그 와중에 딜은 100만을 찍었다가 내려가고 있고
They will advance automatically to the upper bracket tomorrow. And the good news is
파리 6마리예요.
we
6마리.
have something to look forward to tomorrow because that's the first time we're going to see the team Cheese, and that's the new Fragrance team.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So you're saying the team decided not to play with?
Team.
No, that's
It's a
Fragments.
fem
He's
team.
right there.
Okay, it's a Satsi team, the Ricky team, the
But-
Frag team, the Dranico team.
Hold on.
분노라서.
Back up a little bit, though. Back up a little bit.
분노라서 그런 것도 있어요. 거기 6마리. 파리가 뭐 하기 전에 다 죽었어요. 다 죽었어.
Don't be rude.
What do you think?
자, 25단 앞마당 한 방에 갔는데 지금 2분이 안 걸렸어요. 1분 30초.
No, that's
Maybe
that's
next
definitely
time.
fair. It sucks that happens to them, but
1분 40초.
tournament must go on. So yeah, like you said, G's will be advancing, and we'll see them
자,
tomorrow.
25단
Really excited to see
Yeah,
that team.
exactly.
앞마당 한 방 하는데
You can see
25단에서 1분 45초? 이게 파악이다.
Will meet cheese up there. And I'm really curious because in the time trials, just a little bit of a note about that team. Fragments only played Havoc Demon Hunter, and we had a team last week that exclusively played Havoc Demon Hunter with Cement Gaming and Punky. So I'm curious if Fragment's gonna pull one of those and just stay on that.
자, 재밌게 보고 계시다면 후원, 구독, 좋아요 한 번씩 부탁드리고 트위치 팔로우.
They're the fifth seed, and they played only Havoc
저는
Demon
잠깐
Hunters
먹을
in
거
the
가지러
Battle
갔다
Divisions,
올게요.
which is, after seeing
Yeah.
the meta evolve, it's not been represented super highly in the meta. It's good. Like it's not.
MDI는 제가 취미삼아 그냥 같이 보고 있는데 C조 경기 같은 경우는 내일은 2경기만 볼 거고 마지막 날 4경기 다 볼 거고 오늘은 다 볼 거고.
I don't think so, and here's why. The real OGs know. Siege of Orgrimmar. Fragments and Max
좀만 이따
trying to
올게요.
top the leaderboards
Okay.
for rank 1 parses on the Feral Druid. He's bringing it back, baby. I'm calling it.
All right.
Hasn't he said that he doesn't want to play Feral? I've heard him multiple times that he doesn't want
He
to play
might have said
Feral
that.
anymore.
I'm just trying to hype it up. Maybe he won't, but I'd like to see it.
I would
Either
love to see
way-
Demon Hunter.
That's something we can look forward to tomorrow, right? So you're all going to tune in again tomorrow to not miss that. Exactly. Something great. So with that, next team up is going to be Thunderstruck, your guys' wild card, against MMDT. Now, Mythic Meme Dream Team is a team that played before. Thunderstruck is a team chat has been asking about, because every time I go into Twitch chat, the question is, what team is Dr. J playing in? And it's actually Thunderstruck. Talk to me a little bit about why that is your wild card.
I think that okay, so this team is a new version of this team. Like, okay, so Dr. J and Lamike played together in the last TGP. They also played together in the last MDI as well. It's a situation where like they played together for, a decent amount of time at this point. They added Velo at a certain point, and now Soda and Yoda are brand new to this team. And I think that they have kind of like some of the other like Legendary, I guess would be like a really good example. They have like a core of players that have played together a couple times. They have a lot of high-end experience, and they have the ability, if they get everything just rolling properly, to be able to like take down some of the top level competition. Now, for them to be able to get to that point, it takes a lot of practice. I know that they've actually been putting in a decent amount of hours. Just like I've seen Yoda online all the time practicing on the European tournament realm and stuff like that. I think that they have the ability to be able to kind of come in and upset teams that are higher seeded than them. Now, it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle. Of course, they are rated a little bit lower seeding wise.
아까 낮에
If you look at the players,
연어 초밥을 조금
MDI
말아놨어.
veterans, these are mainstays of the MDI. They should be able to have that,
제가 마른 거예요.
to win.
All right.
그 와중에 맛있게
So much for
먹겠다고
that. Really insightful.
레몬 사가지고
Now, Zach,
마요네즈에다가
do you know anything
레몬
about
바르고 막.
Mythic Meme Dream Team that you want to tell us? To be fair, they played in the MDI before, but they're not as known, of course, as the team Thunderstruck. A little bit about them, though. They were actually also a team that exclusively played with Havoc Demon Hunter on one of the players, which is going to be Singularity. So that may be something to look out for. Yet another Havoc DH return.
이거 제가 초밥 되게 좋아하는데 요새 초밥 시켜 먹으면 너무 비싸가지고.
Only the information they've given us and what you have also just told me now should be interesting. But I think
인터넷으로 500g 산 1kg는 좀 많고 500g 샀는데
I do have some.
Yeah,
more on
I
it.
대충 한 3, 40피스 나오더라고요. 그리고 이게 집에서 썰면 아무래도
They're gonna
좀
have
두껍잖아요,
ice, not rain,
연어가.
go anywhere after that, it's going to be thunderstruck against the Mythic Meme Dream team.
초밥 거의 집에서 만들어 먹는데 밥이야 뭐 그냥 흰밥 지면 되고 이게 그 초대리? 초대리라고 하잖아요. 초대리 만드는 게 막 끓여서 하는 게 아니고 그냥 대충 소금 설탕 넣은 다음에 그냥 저는 락앤락 쬐끔한 거에다가 소금 설탕 넣고 그냥 흔들거든요. 그럼 잘 섞여가지고 이게 소금 설탕을 생각보다 많이 넣어야 되는데 그게 녹이기가 되게 힘들어요. 그래갖고 그냥 락앤락 작은 통에다 넣고 흔들어서 섞음. 네, 회 500g은 살짝 많은 것 같아요. 살짝 많아. 다른 건 모르겠는데 초밥은 진짜 집에서 만들어 드시는 거 추천함. 일단 가격이나 이런 걸 떠나서 집에서 만들어 먹는 게 훨씬 더 맛있어요. 회가. 일단 회가 맛있어야 되잖아요. 초밥은. 사 먹는 게 훨씬 더 싱싱해. 진짜. 어머님 같이 사시면은 만들어 드리면 되게 좋아할 듯? 좋아하실 듯? 뭐 회 썰어야 되고 그런 거 귀찮긴 하는데 이게 막 이쁘게 안 썰어도 되거든요. 그냥 대충 칼로 자르면 그냥 잘려요. 연어야 뭐 대충 잘라도 맛있으니까. 제가 산 게 500g에 2만원, 2만원? 2만 1,000원? 이렇게 샀거든요. 뭐 부위별로 조금 가격 다른 것 같고 키로로 사면 더 싼 것 같은데 키로는 너무 많을 것 같아요. 연어도 얼렸다가 해동해서 먹고 그러나? 참치 같은 거는 시켜도 어차피 얼려서 오는 거라 크게 상관이 없는데 연어는 뭔가 얼렸다가 녹여 먹으면은 기분이 별로일 것 같아갖고 빨리 딸내미들이 초밥을 먹기 시작해야 저도 막 사이즈 크게 사서 먹고 그럴 텐데.
All right, and welcome back from that break. Since then, I have replaced Zyronic and Makes, and now have the lovely Nagura and Dratnos joining me. Welcome, guys. How was your break?
It was great.
이거 팀 이름이 잘못됐는데요? 치즈 나와야 돼, 치즈.
Meme Dream Team up next here, and Thunderstruck. You know, they're coming in as the 8th seed on the whole entire tournament. The Mythic Meme Dream Team, the 18th seed. And so this is a
진짜 이런
a
실수들.
series that kind of should be Thunderstruck favored, don't you think, Dratnos?
Yes, yeah. In terms of seeding, it's not our biggest disparity of the weekend, but it is substantial. You know, there's a couple minutes of time trial times in favor here of Thunderstruck.
알게타르 대학 나오네요.
Bringing, you know, a huge degree of
정화의
MDI
강화.
veterancy with their roster. All right, you've got Dr. J, you've got Yoda, you've got Velo, you got Lamike, you got Soda, right? Like these are people that you will recognize from the Race to World First, you'll recognize from MDIs in past seasons. But crucially, you won't recognize a lot of them having played together on the same team before, right? This is a team that is a bunch of Lego blocks that are each individually strong, but we have yet to see how they fit together.
Nagura, I saw you give the maps a little bit of a look whenever you saw them initially pop up. What was your reaction to that?
Yeah, I'm very confused because both teams banning Temple here. Now, Temple is the lowest key, like a 20th key, right? And it was a time trial key as well. So it's very interesting that both of these teams banned it.
아, 썬더가 두
Additionally, we asked these
팀이구나.
teams questions beforehand, and we asked them what the easiest dungeons in their opinions are.
이 팀이 원래
MT
4경기거든요.
for them is actually
홈페이지에서는.
Temple.
근데 세 번째 안에.
And the hardest keys for them is the bowstring dungeons. So I was
Which is
almost
also
sure they're
Academy.
going to ban either Academy or Ruby, but they ended up banning Temple. So very interesting. I wonder why that is.
It actually really is an interesting strategy. I mean, this is going to be the first ALG Academy that we're going to see this weekend. We saw a lot of unique routing in regards to how mobs were being snapped in a...
아, 이게 대진이 좋은, 이게 맵
I think that that's going to be
순서가 좋은데
in map 2.
하늘빛하고 대학이라서.
Map 1 in this Azure Vault, Dratnos, that you're kind of like, what are the things that people need to be watching out for?
How few pulls can you do the very start of the
여기
dungeon,
썬더스트럭
right?
팀은 예선전 8위 팀이거든요.
And then can you be
그래서 아마 전판보다는 조금 더 잘할 것 같긴 한데.
and make sure that you're not having any deaths there. Are you efficient
하늘빛도 뭐 어느 정도 정형화돼서 그렇게 기대는 안 되는데 대학이 조금 기대되네요.
at the end is a vital point of the dungeon. So
대학은 지난주에 그 도넛이었나? 너무 루트가 좀 좋았어가지고
Mythic Meme Dream Team are deploying that Havoc Demon Hunter as well, whereas Thunderstruck instead using the Feral Druid in that spot. So interesting little difference as both are getting a similar pull
snapping.
going here. Wow,
You're
Thunderstruck are going
snapping
bigger though.
everything.
썬더스트럭?
They pulled
This is
everything.
huge.
in the
그치, 이게
first area,
어픽스가
they're snapping it downstairs. So they're gonna get
뭐
defeated
하기가
in the
좋은
second
어픽스라서.
spell, I believe. Well, they have all of these lashers. There's so many lashers in this pool, plus all of these tenders on top as well. So it looks like we don't see any Furies being snapped just yet. So either they didn't actually attack the Whelplings, or they'll get them later. But I think maybe they just didn't skip. They didn't pull the Whelplings. I like this so much because it ends up just being one pull. So while almost all of the teams that we have seen do Usher Vault, all of them did 2 pulls at least.
네, 도넛이 속거로 급플링 했던 팀.
Thunderstruck with this snap here, with all of the lashes being snapped down, with the tender, they end up only doing 1 big pull before.
썬더스트럭.
This is gonna save them so much time.
그러니까 저도 어픽스가 좋아가지고 이런 플링을 기대했거든요.
MMDT ends up getting some more trash done or more percentage, then Thunderstruck will have to catch up to the percentage later on. But cutting down on the amount of pulls that you have to do in a dungeon is so efficient. So I really, really like this strategy here by Thunderstruck.
Yeah, so it's
손몹들이 어떻게 안 깨고 이렇게 내려왔는지는 모르겠는데.
You know, you have a lot of mobs that are kind of uncooperative and it's annoying to group them, but snapping them all into the same spot, there was only one mob that was far away, and Velo as an evoker was able to just glide down and grab that far away tree. So they really saved a lot of time in grouping that pull as well. So I do think it was really cool as well.
퍼센트가 동일한 거 보니까 그냥 달고 플링해서 내려오면은 애드가 안 나나 보네요. 그 새끼용이.
So Thunderstruck not even gonna fall behind on that metric, and yeah, it's hard to imagine this going badly for Thunderstruck from here, right? Because they've gotten this boss pulled earlier. They've definitely got the better of this early exchange. Mythic Meme Dream Team are popping their lust now. Thunderstruck are actually holding on to their lust? Huh, I wonder if they're just waiting for their PI.
아, 썬더스트럭
or
르마이크인데?
if they are
르마이크
going to
요다?
for a trash pull after this. I feel like on Tyrannical though, you gotta send it on the boss, right?
Yeah, it's definitely
좀
interesting.
치는 양반들이죠. 뭐 나머지는 제가 닉네임을 모르는데 다들 와우 그래도 조금 하시는 분들은 르마이크랑 요다는 다 아니까.
Go with that timer approximately, then that means they're only gonna get 2 bloodlusts, right? Oh, they're now used their bloodlust.
Yeah.
So they saved it for the army of
루트가 확실히 좋아요.
possibly.
Thunderstruck.
You see the PI being used on Jay here.
뭐
And
딜,
maybe they had
딜이
they still had some cooldowns for the
왜 여기가 더 빠른?
trash pool.
아, 차이 나는구나.
On, and now they saved it. But are they gonna get full uptime on this as the boss is dropping lower and lower? I wonder.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about that as well. This might be a bloodlust that helps them, you know, be a little bit hastier as they walk away from the boss, because yeah, the boss is just gonna die here, and they just did so much damage. They are gonna lose a tiny bit of that lust, only a few seconds, only 3 or 4 seconds at the very end, so not the end of the world. And because they delayed it, they did get to combine it with all of those cooldowns that they used. On the other hand, you know, it's not going to be too
맞을 거예요.
they get to
그
bring it
요다.
back at the end of the dungeon. If it's a 16-minute dungeon, they're still going to have a nice 3-minute window at the end of the dungeon to hit that lust in. That can be basically any time during the last boss fight.
고정네 힘든가요?
Huge pull now.
근데 뭐 그러니까 어떤 클래스 하는지는 모르겠는데
This is a very scary
그 알고 계시는 요다
pull.
맞아요.
Going off as well. Looks like Lamike is just going to stand in that big AoE circle as well, face tanking the whole thing here with that spell block.
Yeah, so that big AoE circle, by the way, in case some people don't know, if you're immune to roots, if you have any ability like freedom, for example, then you actually don't get, it doesn't do any damage to you, it doesn't do anything. So a paladin, for example, can buff a melee player with freedom if they don't have anything themselves, and then it can just stand in that circle. And Lamike also uses
확실히 상위권 팀들은
to get rid of that. So really
1렘 잡고 요 바로 뒷플링을 한번 하고 가는 게 이득이라고 생각을 다들 하는 것 같아요.
MMDT, on the other hand, is just now starting that similar pull that we saw. In fact, it's the same pull.
MDI 첫 경기는 재밌었는데 지금은 사실 약간
jumping over, hovering over to those elementals, making sure they gather them up. But yeah, I think Meme Dream Team just a little bit slower compared to Thunderstruck.
약간 순위 떨어지는 팀들만 남았어요. 근데 이번 경기는 좀 괜찮네요.
Both teams are on 0 deaths as Thunderstruck are now getting this patrol.
그렇죠. 종족도 유의미해요.
And once they're done with this, they can basically hop down from here. They shouldn't need any more trash in this upper ring area, so we'll see how they decide to handle this, because all the remaining trash up here.
야드가 혹시 그 숨을 풀기처럼 쓰는 그런 게 있나요?
And so yeah, it looks like they are looking.
그러니까 풀기 중에 그 숨을 수면 씹으려고 쓴 건지 풀기처럼 쓴 건지 모르겠네.
Does land it into the heroic leap. And now they're starting up a pull in this part of the dungeon. It looks like it is another 2 packs together. So again, they're not going too massive here. Got to be a little bit careful in this area, even though it's tyrannical and even though you
MDI 종족 같은 경우는
these mobs in and of themselves can be pretty deadly. You've got a lot of things to look out for, and the bigger your pull gets, the more likely it is that just one of those things is going to go.
뭐 종특으로 뭐 장면을 만들어내는 게 되게 자주 있었어요. 뭐 저가 때 5명 다 나일 해가지고 어피스 쪽을 아예 패스해버린다든지 그런 기믹들이 많아요.
That is something we have seen from a lot of teams. Echo, for example, just pulling the whole room basically. And now we can see almost all offensive cities are ready. Still a little bit of time on that PI left. But we'll see what they're going to be pulling here as Lemike is gathering up some of these keepers and guards already. And you also see that Lemike has all defensive cooldowns available for him here. So technically, if you want to pull everything, Lemike should be safe with all of those defensives ready.
Yeah, Spell Block is the big one against these mobs. These Ice Cutters and that Spellfrost Breath from the Lieutenant are extremely dangerous. But if you have Spell Block up, you can see Lemike is actually not taking too much damage. Does also use Last Stand, now Shield Wall as well. And I suspect what's going to happen here is as soon as that Spell Block expires, he is going to start kiting, and he's going to make sure that he doesn't actually take any of that extra damage from these. You can get a couple of stuns on the Ice Cutters as you get to the end of this, but these are starting to get raging as well. I think this might be a heroic leap away for Lemike, or maybe he's just going to face tank it all the way to the end. He's backpedaling now, backstepping away from some of these mobs. Yeah, look at this. Oh, Death Grip to try and keep the Vault Guard away, but somehow Jay goes down.
썬더 부죽 죽었네.
Is it possible that Velo didn't skill like the oppressive roar raging dispel? Because that's an extra talent, right? Because I saw the oppressive roar being used. Okay, so maybe he used it a little bit too early because I saw the debuff on the mobs, but some of them were still raging. So either he maybe used it a little bit too early,
아까 정경기에서
something went wrong there. But either way, they did manage to finish it off anyway.
썬더드가 사이프 한 번 보고 넘겼는데 그때는 쿨기를 다 맞춰갔었거든요. 지금 썬더스트롱은 쿨기가 없는데 그래도 한 방에 넘길 수 있나?
You're definitely gonna get that first intermission phase, but if they have enough damage, then they will be able to skip the second one. So we'll see if they're able to do that. As MMDT is
아까 66%까지 뺐었거든요.
Doing this area a little bit slower, but they're still pulling the Lieutenant on top of those first couple of trash packs, so they're still pretty dangerous on the tank here on their Prod Warrior, but going a little bit slower on their side.
Yeah, this is one of the scarier parts of the dungeon for a warrior, and notably Madburn doesn't have Spell Block available yet, so maybe waiting for that before making this pull really big. We'll see how Mythic Meme Dream Team decide to handle this. They, of course, also have that AoE Soothe that you were talking about, the Evoker talent where their Oppressive Roar. It AoE Soothes, it's really good on Raging.
다음 주 일정 제가 어떻게 될지 몰라가지고
a good AoE Soothe. It's on a long cooldown unless you do get a lot of dispels with it. But Singularity goes down for Mythic Meme Dream Team. That's going to be their battle res.
화수는 돼야지 알 것 같아요. 저는.
Now they're starting to move their pull forward, but here goes Thunderstruck trying to beat the second intermission here. So the way we look at this is look at that health bar and the mana bar for Azure Blade. If the health bar hits 0 before the mana bar does, that's really good. You do get a couple of extra seconds after the mana bar hits 0 while Azure Blade's running to the middle of the room, but you really want to see them keeping that health bar ahead of the mana bar, and it looks like they're doing a pretty good job so far.
Yeah, it's looking good. They're falling behind a little bit on boss damage here. You can see mana is getting lower and lower and lower. They're dragging it all the way to the side, making sure that the travel time to the middle is longer, delaying it even further. But I don't think they're going to be able to make it. They're not going to have enough time. 4%.
Oh, no.
3%. His cast is going off. Yes, they are getting another intermission phase. That is actually not so good for Thunderstruck.
Ooh.
But Mythic MMDT is having huge problems on their side as their Prod Warrior does go down. They have a battle rest available. Actually, they don't have any rest available. This is going to be a full team wipe for MMDT, unfortunately, as they pulled a lot of trash on top of the boss. They not only did they pull the trash pack that Thunderstruck pulled on the boss, but they additionally pulled extra guards on top of the boss, which just caused there to be too much damage on their Prod Warrior, not being able to survive that, and it cost them to have a full team wipe. It is possible that they maybe
썬더스트럭
knew
살짝
they were
견적 잘못
behind,
냈네요.
and they tried to do a little bit of a bigger pull there onto the boss, and unfortunately just did not work out for them.
Yeah, I like that strategy if that was their idea, because otherwise I don't see how
2패
they could have made up time.
4패 끝나고
to
오프닝에
catch up
쿨게 다
with
몰아갖고
Thunderstruck
램드 팰라고 했던 것
because that
같은데
didn't work out for them. It's one of the worst places to wipe in Azure Vault because you have this whole run back to do. You do get a little bit of a speed buff during this run back, but it is not enough. It is still an extremely long run back. So
썬더스트럭 순서가 살짝 다른데
behind Thunderstruck have started on the third boss here. Velo's going to use Rescue to free Soda from the back of those Frost Bomb puddles.
이거 블러드를 쪼레다 쓰려고 하는 것 같은데
Clash here on the first phase. This one, the phases are a little bit less punishing than the Azure Blade intermissions, but you do still want to try and beat as many of those absolute zero casts as you can. So big single target DPS check. This whole dungeon, it's really valuable if you can find a little bit more single target in your builds wherever it's possible to.
이거 썬더스트럭 의도를 모르겠네.
Thunderstruck is choosing to go a little bit of a different route here. They didn't kill off all of their trash yet before going to this boss, so they actually went backwards after Azure Blade, meaning that they are gonna have to kill more trash after the last boss, or at least assume that's what they're gonna do. So they're gonna finish off Grey Wing and then do the last boss.
이게 이넴 잡고 뒤로 빠꾸해서 점프해서 가는 게 우선 루트가 조금 있는데 막냄 잡고 말 걸어서 입고 가서 포탈 타고 다시 쪼를 잡겠다는 것 같은데 이게 더 빠른가? 얘네도 연구를 뭔가 많이 했을 텐데.
Snap some stuff onto the last boss, right? You could, grab some of the frog pull or something. Bring it onto the last boss, and then after the last boss dies, you teleport back to the start of the dungeon and get those, whelp pulls. Could be pretty fast.
It's technically yes, but they don't have a rogue.
Yeah, so you'd have to have. Okay, well that is a bit of a problem for it. Yeah, you could have your warrior go and grab them and then jump off and heroic.
일단 MMDT 팀은 뭐
Problem is, it's a pretty like.
이내면서 전멸에서 나가리
You need a
났고.
lot of count before you can finish this dungeon. Maybe you just kill the boss and then you go do trash, and then you go do the last boss.
I mean,
의도를 모르겠네.
because here on the side there's the two breakers and then the frogs, right? So technically you can see like jump over, then they can use grips or whatever to get him down to the platform.
아 타오렌학사는
Then
그
play multiple breakers.
요새 많이들 쓰는 원자 재측정기라는 장난감이 있거든요. 그런 걸로 아마 형변했을 거예요.
And Lemike actually does take some damage. I think he might have pulled them.
아우 MMDT 1%.
I see Lemike
yeah, everybody
taking
else-
damage,
블러드까지
taking
썼는데.
damage. So I think he might be right. There's two
Wow.
breakers. Alright, so I wonder if they pulled more. We do see two breakers for sure. It's possible that
This
they maybe
is
pulled
so
more.
cool.
But I really
Okay, it
like
looks-
this. This is such a cool strategy.
It looks like it's just the two breakers for now. These are two breakers that we've often seen skipped. You can
이거
skip
뭐지?
them with Mind Soothe if you're going around the dungeon in a normal way. But Thunderstruck say, okay, we can do these two breakers. We'll just do them with the boss. They're quite nasty in terms of the AoE damage they do, right? But it's just a boss fight. You have your lust for this. They're gonna get cleaved down while you're killing all these crystals and stuff anyways. You do have to watch out for those shoulder slams knocking people around, but this is really cool out of Thunderstruck. They are still going to need a lot of count at the end of this, though. I think they still need more count than they can get from the start of the dungeon as well. So, I'm very curious what exactly they're going to do here.
폭군이라서 가능한 루트 같은데
I mean, maybe they just go.
뭐 어쨌든
off
자원이면
after
이득이긴 하죠,
the
저거.
rest of the frog area, but I feel like the backtracking here, that's my big question mark for this, is where are they going to backtrack? Because what Mythic Meme Dream Team are doing right now, you can see, is this big ol' frog section. This area, it's a lot of count. It's dangerous, but it's a lot of count. But if Thunderstruck want to go there, it's going to take them some travel time to get back there.
근데 저게 용가리 두 마리 붙어 잡는다고
All of the
퍼센트에서
cool
이득이 뭐 엄청
efficiency
크고 그러진 않을 것 같은데.
boss maybe gets eliminated by that.
뭐 다른 거 잡을 수 있는 방법이 있나?
They do of course have the teleporter after finishing off the last boss. So technically speaking, they can teleport around to two different places, right? But yeah, it's a lot of travel time.
저 용가리 두 마리 데리고 내려가는 거는
But interesting. I like the strategy a lot.
어픽스에
I think
따라서 카피에서
they
쓰는
also have
팀이 있긴
versatility on
하겠네요.
their raging dispels as well, because these breakers, even though it's not fortified, if they cast their roar, their
얘네들은 진짜 램드 단독 전투 싫어하긴 한다.
and they're raging at the same time, it can do a lot of AoE damage to the group. I don't think it would necessarily one-shot them on a 21 Tyrannical, but it definitely would be pretty dangerous. So we saw a Sooth coming out of Yoda on the first breaker going below 30%, and then we saw an oppressive roar come out of Velo on that evoker to make sure that those raging casts are not going to go through. So really well executed by Thunderstruck as well, as now the boss is dead and they're gonna all teleport. Let's see where they go. Alright, it looks like they're not
Okay.
killing the Furies. It looks like they're gonna go to the frog area.
Well, okay, yeah, Lamike is in the lead here, and it is the frog area, so I guess this didn't take them very long to get back here, though, right? It was maybe 10 or 15 seconds of travel time with the teleports. And yeah, here comes a big frog pull.
Yeah.
They do have a breaker.
블러드도 썼네, 막내면서.
Well, look at this.
Oh,
The boss even
이러면은 오히려
Yeah,
동선으로
shows
로스
up here
같은데.
for that RP segment.
interesting.
My immersion.
Alright, so it looks like Thunderstruck is just gathering up all of these
뭔가
treasures.
신선하긴
Too many
했는데
good
이해는 할
comparison.
수가 없다.
So, earlier we saw Thundered do this key, and they cleared it in 16 minutes. And
아, 방을 안에까지 안 몰고 그냥 여기서 딱 퍼센트가 끝나나?
Actually going to be slower than Thundered with the strategy that they're playing, because I doubt they can finish off this pull in 20 seconds. Either way, they are going to finish off all of this trash, I believe, with one pull. So all of this is going to give them 100%, I would assume, as they do have all
Is
of
this
this trash
100%?
gathered up. I'm not sure.
I think this might even still be. They might still need one more pull after this. I mean, we'll see. I guess there's a lot of mobs in here. Maybe this is 100%. This does look like 100%. All right, yeah. You gotta be right. This is so many enemies. The raging here is very dangerous. Velo does have that oppressive roar, AoE soothe, but doesn't hit all the mobs. Looks like was focusing on mostly getting the breakers, and there it is. Now a single soothe on that last one. And yeah, this is going to be count for Thunderstruck. So Thunderstruck are going to get the win here.
2렘 잡고 3렘부터 바로 간 건 이해가 안 되는데
That's one of the teams they really need to be able to beat if they want to get out of this group, right? They need to not just take out one of
방 하나 더 안 들어가고 그 전에 끝내는 건 좋네요.
as well.
훌링하는데 시간을 확실히 줄이니까.
But I love their strat here. I love that snap. That was so cool.
Yeah, I mean, right after that, Thunderstruck, I think that you...
썬더스트럭도 루트가 뭔가
Thunder being a little bit faster in Azure Vault is a bit concerning, but I thought we saw a lot of very
나름
good
고급진.
from Thunderstruck there as they were able to take down this first map. And I think
MDT 설명을 해주네.
probably the coolest part, that jump down into Tailash Greywing. It's something that you actually see a decent amount on live.
근데 이 방 안에까지 다 안 잡았거든요.
Executed all too
요
often.
앞에까지 딱 끝낸 것 같은데.
Looking to run frog routes and stuff like that. But I think that snap that was
잘못 찍은 것 같은데. MDT를 켜갖고 설명을 해주네.
to Draconoid breakers. If we can roll the replay as well, we can talk about that.
이 두 마리를 땡겨갖고 막nem에 붙어서 갔다 뭐 그런 설명을 해주는 거죠 지금.
They're going to be looking to adapt in the future. So, and I mean, on top of that, this first pull is just absolutely spectacular. I thought that the ability to be able
아
to
이렇게 한 점으로 오는구나.
all of the tenders, all of the lashers, and consolidate a pull that teams are more often than not doing in two separate pulls into the first pull of the dungeon was phenomenal. And I mean, it's going to be scary. You're going to wipe a lot trying to get this set up. But I think it's a situation where like Thunderstruck had a lot of pieces in this dungeon that was going to speed them up a lot in time. I thought that there were some things that
이거 좀 해보고 싶은데.
some live route stuff. I thought that missing this on Azure Blade, for example, missing the phase here, also cost them somewhere in the order of 30 to 45 seconds. But overall, I thought that how well they played in the series, it looked pretty good against Mythic Meme Dream Team.
Yeah, I think that you're probably right. That phase is probably the difference between their timer and Thunder's, right? So I guess that's a good sign. And yeah, Mythic Meme Dream Team also looking solid. I mean, you have this wipe here and you're way behind. but
분노줄에 탱커
they were
터졌네.
doing well throughout the rest of the dungeon. They were staying close, so I think this is still going to be a series to watch as we go into the rest of the maps. But very cool innovation. I loved seeing in MDI teams not just copying the routes of other teams, but because the keystone level is different, the affixes are different, and because every team has their own ideas, we're seeing so many little different innovations out of every weekend.
Dude, I don't like it whenever teams copy routes because it's so easy to copy a route, but then you just end up being like a little bit worse at it, or you end up losing some time just straight up copying a route. Whenever you could do things like snapping these Draconoid breakers in the pull, and like I didn't even know this pull was possible, right?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, yoinking a route or at least running it and seeing if it's faster than whatever you can come up with is good, but
막내면 용과를 두 마리 붙이는 거는
maybe it's partially the key level being this high, meaning that
고단에서는 절대 못 하겠다.
23 one weekend to the next really does change the field of possibilities. And also, yeah, we have so many innovators in this season of MDI, so it is really cool to see. And look at that effective DPS between Dr. J and Yoda, tied at 138k. Yoda, though, gets the tiebreaker on healing, I think. So, yeah, but if you look at the interrupts tiebreaker, it's actually going to go to Dr. J, but then the deaths tiebreaker goes back to Yoda. So I'm not sure what to think about who won on the Thunderstruck damage overall.
I think Velo won because 50k DPS overall as an evoker.
아,
That's pretty
닥터제인가?
crazy, so I'm gonna
That's
give
a
it to
good
Velo.
point.
제이?
That is a very good
All right.
point.
그러고 보니까 르마이크 팀에 닥터제이 있었던 것 같은데.
Algathar Academy bolstering, by the way, as the next dungeon. We kind of that 22 fortified bolstering storming. Naguro, do you expect the innovation that we saw from Thunderstruck there to be something that it should be more positive, right? Since we know that they're kind of trying to reinvent their own routes.
I think
뭔가
so.
닥터제이 MD에 안 나온다고 했던 것 같기도 하고.
In other weekends was just like different
저
things
제이가
all around
닥터제이인지
together,
아닌지
different
모르겠네.
things, starting at different areas, snapping different kind of mobs to different places. We saw even evokers jumping around barriers and pulling mobs into the tree boss. So I'm really excited to see what the teams are going to do here. Now, bolstering is of course going to make everything a little bit more difficult. For example, we've seen teams
방금 썬더스트럭 했던 거 그 첫 풀링
in front of
Yeah.
the
첫 풀링 같은 경우는 아마 타 팀에서도 이제 많이 할 것 같네요. 요상하게 한 점으로 딱 모이네 저게.
So that's for sure not going to happen.
기믹 어떤 기믹인지는 잘 모르겠다.
Snap the lasher somewhere else, right? What are you going to do? How are you going to play around this bolstering ethics? Because I do think in Academy specifically, bolstering can be really annoying, especially with the
에코도
area, and then you also have the Ravagers that have a lot more.
풀링 할 때 두 번 끊어갔었거든요.
So we'll see how to deal with that.
So,
I
Travis,
think-
historically, first pull of the dungeon in Veximus's area has been like a Ravager plus the triple pack. The 3 packs
Right.
are in the Veximus room. Do you expect that to be the first pull?
I think the Ravager is pretty sketch on.
여기는 양팀 다 도적이나 양꾼이 있을 텐데 아마 도적이겠죠? 도적이 갖다 붙여주는 거는 진짜 많이 이득이었어가지고 강화라 좀 감당이 될지는 모르겠는데
I think maybe you just fight that with the boss instead. I think that's going to be a good strategy for a lot of these is hard trash on bosses instead. Because the bosses don't bolster, right? And you can take like that one trash pull onto boss. You could maybe even keep chaining mobs into some of these bosses as well. That snap that we saw of the lashers, maybe instead of those lashers coming onto the birds, those lashers come onto Croth instead, or something like that. Maybe that's a possibility for a bolstering adjustment to the plan, but I'm really curious to see what it looks like as well. Maybe you just go Overgrown Ancient first on bolstering as well.
I mean, typically we haven't seen Overgrown Ancient first because it costs you around 20 seconds of travel time at the very end of the dungeon.
Yeah, and also you don't get to snap lashers if you do that, but I don't know. It's tough. Yeah, I'm really curious to see what the two teams have for us as we are about to get underway here. Compositions are remaining the same between the two teams, and we'll get to see which stat buffs they go and grab. It looks like Thunderstruck mostly making a beeline towards the verse here from the red dragonflight.
It's interesting because
확실히 백사무스부터.
their prod warrior picked up the verse buff. So Thunderstruck definitely valuing verse a little bit higher on their side as they now shroud toward the Veximus area on both sides. So both of the teams deciding that Veximus first is the correct choice. And now
MDI니까 이걸 세무리를 할 텐데
Mike already charging into that pack. It looks like both teams are gathering up all of the
이게 강화 조금이라도 먹었을 때 하나라도 짜리 세면은 거의 무조건 원방이거든요.
not pulling that Ravager pack on top. And this pull is still incredibly dangerous, even without the Ravager in there, because there's just so many dangerous casts going out. You have the Surges, you have the Disorient going through, you have the bleeds on the tank as well, that the Axes do, that can be pretty deadly as well. So lots of interrupts being required here for both teams. And then on top
이런
of that,
플레이가 너무
and
좀
in so many
스무스하다.
mobs, you can see that some of them at the very end are bolstered really highly. So that's the moment where you run out of interrupts. And if any casts go through here, it's definitely going to one-shot a person if any of those surge casts go through. Oh,
Yeah, well
there it
played
goes.
by-
A surge going through for the rogue on a really highly bolstered mob. It actually went right through cheat death. It overkilled him through
이게
cheat
진짜
death.
피를 잘 맞춰야 되는데.
One proc the cheat, and then the second, the second killed a few, like 10 seconds later after cheat. So one surge proc to cheat, and
Okay.
then 10 seconds later it got
Oh, I
surged
see.
again. Was what happened there for old Yin Rogue, and unfortunately as well, cheat's going to be on cooldown now for this boss fight where it's quite valuable. Whereas Thunderstruck are going to get to keep it, but look at Mythic Meme Dream Team. They are just going right into boss with this, while Thunderstruck are not. So we are going to get to see just how scary this is. Oh, okay. So Mythic Meme
썬더스트로크는
pulling the Ravager though. They've pulled
쫄을 잡고 가는데 MMDT 팀은 그냥 쫄 조금 붙여갖고 램드를 바로 갔거든요. 이러면은 어쨌든 MMDT 팀이 좀 더 이득이죠. 썬더스트로크는 어쨌든 쫄 하나도 없이 램드를 가야 돼서 이건 무조건 손해인데.
This seems like one less pull, although there is still that Ravager for them to deal with later. Maybe they'll just ignore it though.
조금 아쉬운데.
Extra Echo Knights at the end.
Yeah, I don't hate the Ravager skip. That's even a strategy that people play in live service as well. If you have bolstering, people just skip the Ravagers completely into other charge instead. And I think I like that because even though you do have a lot of funnel damage with some of these
뭐 어쨌든 그 큰 용갈이 약탈자 맞나? 약탈자를 잡아야 돼서 뭐 MMDT 팀이 엄청 빠르다 뭐 이런 건 아닌데.
You can just completely AoE down. But Thunderstruck now are on Maximus as well. MMDT did finish off the trash. They're now on 17%. Thunderstruck, of course, ahead in trash percentage because of that extra pull that they did.
양팀 실력이 같다면은 쫄을 붙인 쪽이 램드
Their bloodlust actually on Thunderstruck's side.
전투가 먼저 끝나는 게 일반 상식이거든요.
First pull of the dungeon. I do want to mention one more thing, by the way, about MMDT.
현장어는 패스하면은 그 막내 앞에서 쫄을 많이 잡아야 돼요.
The fact about Yin, their rogue, is that they specifically said that they hate bolstering as an affix, and I think that's just really ironic because now they were the ones getting.
대학은 그래도 좀 패스하네요 아예. 이러고 나서 뭐 다른 쫄들을 좀 효율적으로 잡을 수 있다면은 MMDT가 많이 이득 본 거긴 한데.
But now Mythic Meme Dream Team are setting up a very interesting pull. It's going to be this bridge pull with the Mana Fiends and the weapons.
오, MMDT.
The Ravager as well. This is so sketchy with bolstering, and Yin immediately gets started.
이거 엄청 어려운 플링이거든요. 정화하기도 하고.
And it's going to be really important that they prioritize their damage well here, but they also have a lot of stun.
찍어쳐야 되는 쫄이 있는데 저
They do have meta stun, it looks like.
약탈자가 피통이 너무 커가지고.
It's going to be close to the end of the boss though, so they don't have to use a battle res here. Both teams now on one death, but no battle res used.
Yeah, it looks like they can just move on and save the battle rest, which is really nice in case something does happen later on. MMDT are about to finish up that Ravager pack, but because they ended up pulling this anyway, it means that Thunderstruck is technically ahead at this point, but it's not so clear to tell because MMDT is going to be a little bit ahead in trash percentage once they finish off those last couple of foragers and that mana fiend that they have. Thunderstruck now gathering up.
보통은 지금 양 팀이 잡는 무리를 공보에다가 갖다 붙이는데
Ravager dies at the same time as the rest of the mobs, even though it does have a lot more HP. And it looks like Velo doesn't even line of sight the Ravager cast, at least not yet. He's just standing there making sure the Ravager, making sure he can DPS the mobs as well. We see a nice combo there with Oppressive Roar and
MMDT 패스한 줄 알았더니 번에 있는 그 약탈자를 붙여 잡았구나.
Shockwave following up by Lamike. But now is the point where everything bolsters a lot, so they have to be careful. If the Ravager gets one more Ember through, that's gonna do a lot of damage.
썬더스트럭 피 관리가 조금 안 됐는데?
somebody that would be able to just avoid the damage. I'm not sure if it was maybe Vanish. Either way,
it
it
may
was
have
actually
been
Shadow Meld by
out of
Yoda.
Yoda there.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. It does jump on the farthest away person, I believe. So Lamike is actually not going to mount up here. He's just going to heroic leap and get Tricks of the Trade put on him. That's because Thunderstruck are now setting up a snap. And it looks like they are interested in snapping 4 Ravagers, or 4 Foragers rather, for the little worms onto this Guardian Sentry. And these things do bolster when they die, so they are going to have to watch out and do a lot of prio damage into that Sentry. Lamike actually getting beat up here as well. Does have to pop shield wall to not die. And this Sentry
도적 남았죠? 저 새끼 쫄들 중보 잡을 때 붙여줄 것 같은데. 썬더스트럭도 마찬가지고.
Are the mobs tornadoes that will.
Yeah, those tornadoes definitely very dangerous, especially if you stand far away from that mini boss. It does seem like that it's harder to see if you get a tornado on you when you're further away. But it looks like Thunderstruck doing a really good job so far. They did
새끼 장어만 붙였나? 두 마리밖에 안 붙인 것 같은데.
They get hit by one of those tornadoes, unfortunately. And you can see they really don't want to finish off those foragers, right? Obviously, bolstering, making this very difficult. If they finish off the foragers first, that Sentry is going to have so many bolstering stacks. And it's going to be very deadly for Lamike because this mini boss, of course.
강화라 양 팀들이 다 무리를 안 하네요. 특히 썬더스트럭은 무리해도 감당이 가능한 실력자들인데.
MMDT though, not that far behind. They did clear a little bit of trash in addition to what Thunderstruck did earlier on. They did also snap some foragers on that mini boss, not as many as Thunderstruck.
꼬프치는 플링 안 하네요.
Yeah, they're a little bit ahead. 1%
확실히 이 새끼 독수리들이라고 해야 되나? 걔네들이 다 강화를 먹어서 여기다 꼬프치기 좀 부담스러웠나 보다.
At the end of this dungeon, even if nothing else were to change here, and there's still a lot of scary pulls. But yeah, we'll see if ever they send a rogue to set up a snap in the middle of this, because the big problem, like you mentioned earlier, the little eagles here do bolster, right? So you can't really pull.
근데 이거 어떻게 안 되나? 조금 아쉬운데.
With bolstering active, but maybe you could snap stuff.
MDI에서는 야드가 대세예요.
The teams think about. Problem with that is that your rogue has to go on an adventure for like a minute to set that up. So I think that's probably just not going to be something they worry too much about. But maybe a team has a cool idea for it.
포커를 요 정도뿐이 활용 안 할 거면은 도적보다는 화법이 더 나아 보이는데.
It really, if you want to not lose a lot of time here, you do want to single target the eagles as much as possible. We actually see a mass route come out of Yoda on Thunderstruck's side, which is really cool. So that means that when
경화구나. 경화면은 또
the last wave, this is the most important wave when it comes to bolstering because you want to target.
네, 쐐기 대회예요.
All classes, whenever you use your to target.
이거는 몇 단까지 올라가느냐, 뭐 등산하는 대회는 아니고 특정 단수를 얼마나 빨리 돌 수 있느냐. 나름 역사와 전통이 있는 대회라서.
They actually have the fear sigil come out of the demon hunter, so really nicely executed by both of the teams, playing around bolstering so well.
Yeah, that sigil is actually so big.
MMDT 팀 지금 그 새끼 독수리들을 악사 공포인장으로 묶어주고 강화 안 먹게. 새끼들을 방역 매즈 해놓고 큰 새부터 먼저 딜하다가 나중에 붙여주는.
Little eagles as well is a downside of those abilities in a pull like this. So keeping some of those little eagles.
강화 주간에도 뭐 대뿌라든지 뭐 그런 식으로 매즈를 저렇게 해서 많이 잡죠.
20 seconds behind still on summoning Croth, but yeah, I think their boss 2 split is maybe going to be a little bit faster than Thunderstruck's.
양 팀이 그래도 순위가 제법 차이가 나거든요. MMDT가 예선 17위 팀이고 썬더스트럭이 8위 팀인데 순위 차에 비해서 격차는 엄청 막 나고 그러진 않네요. 뭐 썬더스트럭이 실수 없이 가면 이길 것 같긴 한데 MMDT도 그래도 순위에 비해서는 굉장히 잘 해주고 있는.
That would be ideal. Now, MMDT already has their Bloodlust back up, but it's incredibly likely that they only get one more Bloodlust in this dungeon. So we're probably going to end up seeing them save it for something later on, possibly a pull into the last boss. But both of the teams still have to deal with the tree area, with the Lasher area, so we'll see what they do with that side. Thunderstruck already on their third Screech, and it does look like Velo is still holding that orb, maybe delaying it a little bit further. Technically, they could play 4 Screeches, but it doesn't look like they want to do that because the boss is dying so
앞으로 혹시
quickly.
사고가
They are
난다고
activating
하면은
that
그
fire
막냄 가는 길에 쫄인데
no thundering. Oh, there we go. Thundering now lining up for Thunderstruck. That's why Velo was holding it for a little bit longer. Really well done by Thunderstruck, making sure they get that extra damage there.
썬더스트럭 지금 그 타이페에 들어가면서 그 공 넣어서 데미지 받는 데미지 증가하는 그 타이페 때 천둥을 잘 맞췄다 뭐 해설이 그런 얘기를 하고 있어요.
Whenever Croth is like below 20% health, you may as well just shoot those orbs into that goal, right? Because you do then get those haste buffs that will expire around the same time the boss dies, and that ends up being just worth. But if you do it too early, then you're getting pushed back for a really long time, and that is annoying.
It also looks like MMDT also had Thundering for their fire phase as well. And they had some extra offensive cooldowns available. You can see the
MMDT도
damage being dealt by their unholy
버프를 잘 맞춘 것 같고 진짜 양팀 비슷하네요.
available on that unholy DK, so getting that extra single target damage, catching up to Thunderstruck quite a bit. We also see
이거는 MMDT가 막 엄청 잘한다기보다는 썬더스트럭이 너무 안전하게 가는 것 같은데.
on the Thunderstruck side. But Thunderstruck now done with the boss. They are moving on to the Lasher area.
특별한 게 없대요. 뭐 강화라서 무리하기 조금 어려울 수 있긴 한데.
Okay, I don't think they're gonna pull. Do you think they're gonna pull all of the skitter
그래도
flies
아쉽다.
considering it's bolstering? Because having a bunch of bolstered skitter flies is not ideal.
I think you take one pack of skitterflies into the boss. If you could take 2 into the boss as well, that's probably even better than doing them with the lashers. Although it's really hard to avoid pulling at least one pack of skitterflies. So we'll see how they decide to set this up. They are going to be fighting right under the boss. This is the part of the room that you fight in if you're not trying to pull the skitterflies at all. And I don't see any skitterflies in combat just yet, so maybe one or both of those packs are coming into boss. But they were only about 17 seconds ahead of Mythic Meme Dream Team on the boss kill. And Mythic Meme Dream Team are going to go really big here.
벌도 안 붙인 것 같은데.
All the skitterflies in on this pull, and they're hitting the lust.
벌은 3마리에서 냄드 붙이려고 그러나?
Interesting.
This is
이제 붙였네.
because of course Bloodlust on this pull is gonna bolster your damage numbers quite a lot on this unholy DK. But the most important thing on this pull, if you want to be fast, is the damage on the Vile Lashers, because the faster they go down, the faster the boss spawns, and the faster you can pull that and move on. So the damage on the smaller mobs doesn't actually matter as much. So the big numbers are nice to look at, but maybe not as relevant as the Vile Lasher damage. As we can see, Thunderstruck is about to finish all of them off already. They had very even damage. Yoda actually going down, unfortunately, though, at the very end of this pull, and it looks like they're not committing a battle rest.
요다 바닥 맞았을래나? 아니면은 벌 강화벌에 원빵 났을래나?
About resting just because of that thundering timing being very good if they would pull the boss now, but it looks like the boss hasn't even activated yet, so using that normal rest makes a lot of sense on their side. MMDT, though, on the other hand, look at the Vile Lashers. They have bolstered so highly, they did not have the same amount of focus target damage on those Lashers.
아프긴
Some
아프다.
of the Lashers have been bolstered pretty highly, costing them quite a lot of time, even though they did commit that Bloodlust. So not as efficient as Thunderstruck.
Yeah, you can see on the damage meters, it looks really good here for Mythic Meme Dream Team, but Thunderstruck are now going to get to do those skitterflies.
지금 보면 용일한테 정지장이 3개가 저장돼 있거든요. 큰 나오면은 정지장 터트리면서 출혈을 다 지워줄 거예요.
Relatively efficiently.
대학 나올 때마다 설명을 드리는데 용일 같은 경우는 이 대학 나무에서 그 소작의 불길을 이렇게 뭐 하나, 둘, 셋 이런 식으로 3명 저장해 놓고 타이페 그 회드 나무 나올 때 정지장을 터트리면서 3명 출혈 해제하고 1명은 찍어서 해제하고 이렇게 4명을 해제해 줄 수 있어요. 홀수번마다.
But Dr. J on the other side for Thunderstruck has a little bit more haste in his gear. I think it's going to be a little bit better for their pulls when they don't have Lust. But notably, Thunderstruck actually do still have Lust in their tank as well. They can
이거는 그 MDI를 돌려보지 마시고 그냥 유튜브에 있는 제 대학 영상
40% of a boss's health.
아무거나 보시면은 바로 이해가 될 거예요.
But they do have their bloodlust available to make it up. I think this is maybe now 30 seconds or
소작이 쿨이 안 돌면서 저장이 되니까.
and there's not a lot of dungeon left.
Yeah, I liked what
그런 식으로 해제도 활용할 수 있어요.
But Thunderstruck just being so much more efficient on this lasher pool really just made the difference here.
해제 2개 해야 되는 뭐 그런 것들이 있잖아요. 뭐 별궁 2번째 중보라든지 공룡사 막내미라든지 그런데도 정지장 저장해서 돌리면은 많이 편해요.
They do have bloodlust available. They do have most of their offensive cooldowns available as well. But it does look like they're not doing that. They're doing one
폭군 같은 경우는
before they're gonna pull the rest of
그 루비 1렘 잡고 나서 라자게스에도 활용할 수 있고.
And I think there's one invoker in there as well. And
정화도 24단인가 23단까지는 미풍 주면은 한 번에 해제해도 되고.
The army from Jay is gonna be available for the boss after this with the bloodlust as well in just a second.
Yeah, Army not so much of an AoE cooldown anyways, right? Obviously you'll press it for the really big AoE pulls at the start of the dungeon, but it mostly is just doing damage to your main target. So
그렇죠. 정지장 파열도 지워져요. 근데 파열의 정지장은 그냥 힐로 돌리는 게
This is something you can be using on live as well. If you fight these Echo Knights on the stairs or anywhere really.
그리고 치명 주간에는 소작 3번 저장하는 거 치명 걸렸는지 안 걸렸는지 잘 봐야 돼. 저거 돌리다가 혹시나 치명이 있는 대상한테 소작 돌리면은 소작 쿨 돌아버리거든요. 힐러 죽었다. 네, 소작으로 치명도 지워져요. 이번 주 같은 경우는 소작 3번 돌려도 그것도 힐로 돌아가긴 해요. 딜러들이 대부분 소작이 묻어있을 거라서 아니 치명이 묻어있을 거라서 소작 힐량이 얼마나 되는지 모르겠네.
Yeah, they do want to make sure that maybe the invokers are the ones that die first to make sure that they're not going to cast any of those bolstered arcane
13,000이요? 그럼 얼마 안 되네. 힐로 쓰긴 별로다.
Because it of course is going to do a lot of damage. They could technically
이번 주 진짜 힐 너무 빡세가지고.
yeah, multiple casts are going to be very deadly. Bloodlust of course being popped by Thunderstruck.
저는 뭐 지금 복술 신기 용일 3개 하고 있으니까 셋 중에 좋은 거 하겠죠?
Disoriented while the grip in of the boss is happening.
세 캐릭터 파밍은 웬만큼 돼 있어가지고
That is coming in just a second. It looks like they were
성능충이라 셋 중에 좋은 걸로 할.
a trash pack, and as soon as the blind ran out, they came in. So this is a really cool strategy that you can do if you have a rogue, where you make sure you aggro a trash pack, but you blind it, so you're still incumbent with it, but they're not going to attack you until the blind runs out.
이번 주 그래도 용일은 할만해요.
Or maybe using a mass route that is also a possibility they could have done.
그래도 용일은 할만함. 근데 복술 해보니까 만화가 너무 딸려가지고.
Maybe extra funnel, but also just not having all
딜러는
come in at the same time to make the pull a little bit easier.
진짜 나와봐야지 알아요.
Those casts that need to be interrupted that watch out for. Additionally, it's also bolstering.
어떻게 될지 모름. 뭐 모든 클래스가 마찬가지지만 항상 패치는 까봐야 어떻게 될지 알죠. 뭐 지금 뭐 징계 좋아진다 하는데 나오기 전엔 몰라요.
As they did lose quite a bit of time on that third boss split.
Yeah, they also have trash coming late into the boss. So again, a really fast plan from Mythic Meme Dream Team. Really, really close here, and they're more than halfway, or almost halfway done with the boss. But it is going to be Thunderstruck here. Actually, in 10 seconds are going to stop the clock, right? Because of those 2 extra deaths. But there's no way Mythic Meme Dream Team can catch this up with those 10 seconds. So it is going to be Thunderstruck taking the series here. But wow, Mythic Meme Dream Team looking very good as well here. And they're within a minute or two of the Thunderstruck team as well. So very impressive out of them.
Not exactly how I expected that to go down.
오늘은
Looking at the seeds,
전부 다 2대0이네.
Seed, you kind of expected Thunderstruck to win. They did win in pretty convincing.
지난주나 지지난주 같은 경우는 그래도 순위 높은 팀들이 한두 번씩 실수해가지고 막 늘어지고 그랬는데.
Very close between these two teams, and I thought that you saw mostly similar routing between the two of them. Janice, did this feel reminiscent of something that you would recommend? people
마지막
try
경기가
out?
그나마 이제
Thunderstruck?
예선 5위 팀이라.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of safety
그쵸.
here. I
지난주
think there's a lot of
다이얼부즈가 참
smart
아쉬웠죠.
stuff. I think that it's vital that they are
아,
doing
다이얼부즈
some
진짜
damage on these pulls.
홈피.
Actually, both teams doing a really good job of prioing
Yeah.
into the Ravagers on the pulls where they have those. And yeah, I mean,
그러니까요.
I think
진기
Trap on Bosses is a really good
지금까지만
play to use this
보면은
week as well for
사실 뭐 쐐기에서 댐감 3%도 크고 응보라도 딜적으로 도움이 되게 많이 도움이 될 거라 패치가 되면은 딜 시너지거든요. 딜 시너지. 신기도 이제 기원으로 안 캐고
Yeah, I mean, it was just surprisingly
응보를
similar.
키고 있을 확률이
You know,
높아요.
surprisingly similar to
뭐,
the live route of, like, what
그러니까 댐감 우수 필요할 때나
doing here. But I
키고
think that, like, the point that you made is just like, oh, we have to be super efficient with our bolstering. We can't make any mistakes in regards to that. Thunderstruck looked good on that front. I mean, they had a couple of deaths here and there. But the technical parts that they were
진기가
running,
되게 쉬워서
the
일단
perfection, and then
일단
it's like, oh,
쉽고
yeah, we had
날개 때 뽕맛 있고
somebody died to a Vile Lasher swirly, and somebody got meleeed on the pack because they just zoomed in a little bit too fast. I thought it was interesting to see the lust differential between the two teams where
진기 같은 경우가 약간
do something that's more live-esque.
게임 좀 게임 잘 못하시는 분들이 일단 날개 키면 나 개쎄니까
And that was going to be their bloodlust because I mean this is a very dangerous pull to be able to deal with, like a double. A lot of the times you'll see this and you'll see teams like single pull this trash pack into the boss, but looking to double pull this, especially on like
야드 같은 경우는 굉장히 좀 어려운
it's
클래스니까
always going to be dangerous.
약간 매니악적인 그런 게 있고
Thunderstruck do get the better of MMDT, sending MMDT down to the lower bracket. We're going to see Thunderstruck again tomorrow in the upper bracket versus Cheese, and I'm really excited to see Cheese versus Thunderstruck in the upper bracket. I think that'll be a good.
그렇죠. 진기는 뭐 옛날부터 다들 쉽다고 했던 클래스라서 야드가 딜 1등이네.
He takes a picture of that and sends it to Dr. J later. He's like, "Yo, check me out."
원래 센 게 더 재밌어요. 그러니까 와우는 뭐 내 재미보다는 캐릭의 성능 따라가시는 게 네, 맞아요. 미터기가 세야 재밌지. 그냥.
We'll see. Here's that damage done overall, and remarkably similar between the two teams. You can see a slight divergence in strategy near the start of the dungeon, with when that big spike comes in, whether it's that 5-minute mark or the 6-minute mark. But both teams with really huge pulls at the start and really
재밌는 캐릭 하는 게 재밌을 것 같아요. 아니면 레이드 가서 내가 딜 1등 하는 게 재밌을 것 같아요.
I will say I think Thunderstruck, you know, they got the better of kind of the lust.
제가 이번 시즌 용일 레이드 재밌다고 하는 게 용일로 레이드 가면은 1미터기 1등을 곧잘 하니까 그래서 재밌는 거거든요.
I thought the MMDT Vex area was actually a big upside of their route, though. You know, the Ravager into those elemental. I thought that was like a fairly solid pull from them. But overall, I mean, it just wasn't enough for them to be able to keep up.
제가 와우 몇 년 동안 하면서 1미터기 1등 해본 적이 없는데 그쵸. 그래서 이번 시즌 신기가 레이드 재미가 없죠. 맨날 힐 미터기 바닥이고 까딱하면 혈중한테 질 것 같고 아니 무슨 힐러가 힐 경쟁을 탱커하고 하고 있어. 진짜 혈중 개무섭다니까요. 이 탱미틸 할까봐 진짜 내가 그동안 힐미틸 많이 만들긴 했지만 내가 탱미틸 되는 건 또 다른 문제거든요. 혈중 힐량 너무 높아. 무서워 죽겠어 진짜.
Instead, they whipped that sucker into the pack. They're actively lowering their single target priority damage, and so they're trolling you.
I remember back in BFA season 1, right?
대부분 탱미틸이에요.
Having to turn their eye beams to not hit the pack during.
저는 신기로 2신화밖에 안 해서.
So,
영웅을 안 가요. 영웅에선 탱미틸 할 수도 있어. 일단. 영웅은 탱미틸 할 수도 있는데. 영웅 레이드는 안 간 지가 좀 오래돼서. 힐러랑 힐량 같은 거 아니에요. 신기랑 힐량 같은 거예요. 신기랑.
that's one of
다른
the
딜러들은
most
그래도
bolstering time lost areas in live keys. It's really hard to avoid bolstering the big eagles when you're doing that pull. So,
힐러랑
thought out.
신기는 달라요
Hopefully
지금.
both teams to counter it.
All right, so that was the last series of today. Just let's get some final thoughts. Nagura, what were you thinking about this weekend? I guess we've seen 2 weekends now, and with this third weekend, was there anything that was like new
아.
or any adaptations that you thought were
치즈가 부전승으로 올랐네. 오늘 경기 끝. 뭐냐.
I really like
치즈 경기에 그래도 보고 싶었는데 브레이커 팀이 포기했나 봐요. 아니면 뭐 일신상의 이유로, 아니면 뭐 인터넷 이유로, 뭐 인터넷 LG라든지. 오늘 여기까지네요. 그러니까 제가 아까 얘기했잖아요. 이게 치즈가 원래 3경기인데 왜 안 하나 했더니
they showed up really well today, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make instead for tomorrow. It's gonna be interesting for
그래서
instead to play against them.
일단 끝났으니까 잠깐 정지해놓고 보여드리면은 내일은 몽카 썬더드 하고 치즈 썬더스트럭 하고 패자주 여기 하고 브레이커는 지금 그거 같거든요? 내일 한 경기 또 안 하겠네. MMDT가 여기 올라올 것 같은데요. 이게 오늘만 그런 건지 어떻게 된 건지 모르겠네요. 그 다음에 승자조 여기까지 하고 승자조 여기까지 하고 이렇게 6경기 하거든요. 그래서 저는 6경기 다 못 보고 내일 와서 이거 2경기만 볼 거니까 내일도 MDI 보실 분들은 보러 오세요. 내일은 몽카 보셔야죠. 오늘 못 보신 분들은.
has all of the information.
Especially in an MDI setting, you can really plan around it and plan all your
아, 첫 경기가 몬카의 별궁? 잘한 몬카의 별궁을 보겠네요. 노쿠드는 밴 됐으면 좋겠고 별궁이나 보관소 봤으면 좋겠다. 노쿠드는 보기 싫고.
your polls around it. Here's a look at those matches that we will be having tomorrow.
That's what I was about to say. Having a bunch of eliminations tomorrow, we're definitely going to have to see how the teams are going to be able to perform. I think that match 5, that Ruby
어둠달도 한번 보고 싶긴 한데 그 상위 팀들 어떻게 하는지.
They need to make sure that they're going to come in a little bit more clean and consistent tomorrow versus their matchup at all since we've seen them last.
I mean,
이번 주는 대지는 용맹들이 다 뒤로 빠져 있네요. 용맹이 별로 안 보이네.
There's time losses that we're seeing out of all of our top seeded teams. Like, you know, it was a bunch of 2-0s today, but we saw Azure Blade Intermission getting an extra one. We saw Mind Soothed Mobs getting pulled.
오늘은
We saw a lot of stuff going like
뭐 한 경기가 뭐 부전승인지 뭐 그렇게 돼가지고 짧았는데 다들 일찍 주무시고 뭐 일찍은 아니지만 내일 봬요. 내일 올게요.
That highly seeded that are that good. I'm actually I'm worried for if there's going to be enough room to make a mistake like that and still win the map. I think there's probably not going to be.
다들 잘 주무시고 좋은 하루 되십시오. 바이.
Match 6 again. We have Cheese, which is that team with Fem. We got Fragments on it as well.